Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Ward, a Doof Media podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the world of parahumans. My name is Matt Freeman, and this is the criminal known only as Scott. Scott, we're sending you away, a world with nobody. You'll be at least 10 miles from the next person, but you should know anyone else that's there, well, they were sent there because they were a problem. You go with a kit, tent, food for a month, heating stove, supplies, tools.
Oh, good. A tent. This is just totally fine then.
Heating stove too.
This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of disappearing villains, jerk-face therapists, and alien-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. This week we begin Arc 13 Black with chapters 13.1 and 13.2. Matt, there's not an interlude chapter. The episode might be a normal length. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Just 2 Victoria chapters toward the beginning of an arc. You know, I was thinking about this and how I think the way we cover early arc versus late arc chapters is just systematically different because just because of the nature of the chapters, there's just different stuff to focus on. Like later chapters tend to be more combat and conflict oriented. Mm-hmm. Earlier chapters tend to be set up and what's going on with all these characters oriented, and so there's just very different stuff to talk about. So I feel like we spent a lot of weeks in arc 12, and so now I forgot how to start covering an arc. So yeah, gonna have to help me here.
It's kind of crazy because you start off so wide, right? Like it's literally an infinite amount of possibilities about what this arc is going to be about. And then as you move through the chapters, those possibilities shrink down to what it is about, right? Yeah. So I think you have to cover those wide possibilities in these first few chapters. So I get what you mean.
Cool.
All right. So do we want to just do it?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Stick around till the end. We're going to do the March's Madness, I guess, conclusion.
No, well we're announcing the championship round. We're not announcing the winner until next week.
Good point. So chapter 13.1 begins, and Victoria starts off this chapter focusing on her physical therapy as she listens to melancholy Goodbye Rock. And as I was starting to write the script, I almost wrote that she's working out. But tonally, contextually, this isn't a workout. She specifically indicates that she's sweating not because of exertion, but because of the effect of even relatively light exercise is quite painful on her injuries. And as she goes through this routine, she fixates on the injuries, the changed texture of her burned hand, the stabbing pain where the centipede sliced her, other injuries that we've seen her receive in this story. So it's not a positive tone.
No, and I really like this opening because we learn in a bit that it's been 3 weeks since the events of the last arc, which in the world of parahumans is a pretty substantial time jump. We usually don't do that. Our characters in these 3 weeks, their focuses have shifted from this cradle arc of merely surviving, merely getting to the next minute and the next hour to thinking more long term. And that's kind of what both of these chapters are about: long term thinking, long term planning. And accordingly, to set that tone up, we start with Victoria doing physical therapy. She's thinking long term about how to repair or stabilize her body.
Yeah.
And I really like that no matter which direction, she's doing the stretching, and you're right, it's really painful for her, and it's like a big exertion. And no matter which direction she turns or stretches, she eventually gets to a point where one of her old injuries nags her, right? It says she's doing 5 repetitions of straight forward, of right, then left. And each time she does this, she gets to a point where, I feel the bullet wound, there's the centipede slash, there's my burned hand. And it's like no matter where she goes, she's surrounded by all her old injuries, as if she can't escape from them no matter what she does.
Yeah, and there's all this tone of like 6 steps forward, roughly 6 steps back. Like the text says, things were improving in some areas, but in cases like that curl up arm jitter, I wasn't getting that much stronger. Sometimes injuries happened where the physio wasn't so much about getting better or getting over the injury, and it was more about keeping it from getting worse. And then shortly after that, the text continues, if I lived that long, I would potentially be doing exercises like these until I was old. For the rest of my life, when I got sick, I'd potentially backslide and lose that 5% of progress I'd made over months of work. When the weather was bad, I'd feel the pangs and the tightness and the scars. And it's like, oh, fuck. Again, it's interesting how you start out this chapter, or at least I started out this chapter thinking like, oh, good. She's taking care of herself. She's spending some time on herself. And it's just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like just dwelling in the hopelessness and like pointlessness of what she's doing. You know, it's dark.
Yeah, it's black.
Yeah.
And we have to do our normal thing here where we take the literal and extend it toward the metaphorical, right? Because she's talking about her physical injuries. She's talking about the literal scars that will be on her for the rest of her life. But we know that there's this trauma side of it, this mental health side of it. And that's the part that Victoria is not focusing on. But the text is like inviting us to make that comparison, the text is almost telling you, yes, take this literal, but expand the physical scar out to the mental scar, out to her trauma. It's like with words like using the word backslide in this, like,
Yeah.
It is basically saying, look at this as this is how Victoria is doing overall, her state. And what we see is a person that, like, it's not even about getting better anymore. It's about staving off getting worse. It's not even about, not curing yourself, but it's not so much about recovery than just like not losing anything. And I love it. It's such a great like cue into Victoria's mindset, because one thing we don't see in these chapters is really her focusing on any of the mental shit she had to go through in that last arc. Like, she killed people. She hurt her mom. These are not things that we see Victoria focusing on in these 2 chapters at all. But the text is cueing us into this stuff is rumbling behind the surface.
Yeah, and maybe I'm making a bit of a leap here, but one thing we're going to notice is that 3 weeks have passed since the end of the last chapter. Mm-hmm. And that's, first of all, that's an unusually long time jump between ward sections. I'm pretty sure that we haven't
Mm-hmm.
seen anything that long before, actually. I may be wrong about that, but that feels pretty significant to me. And we're picking up here, and Victoria at no point in these 2 chapters does the several paragraphs of internal rumination about what she's been up to for this last 3 weeks. It's almost as though we're picking up with her here because, like, almost nothing has been going on with her. Like, and we do find out that, like, yeah, Breakthrough's been doing things. It's not like Victoria's been sitting in her room for 3 weeks, but I get this sense that she's been almost in stasis that whole time. And now, like, we're catching up to her when an event happens that's actually going to kind of jostle her again.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. I mean, and I love how the text hints at this, right? Like we said, like, eventually Ashley's going to barge in, and one of the things Ashley says to her, she says, "You're sweating, more nightmares." And I loved, like, 2 words, more nightmares, is just a perfect snapshot into what's going on in Victoria's mind right now, because the implication here is that this is a regular occurrence. This has been happening over and over again over the past few nights, to the point where Ashley has noticed it. And that's not something Victoria deals with in internally at all. We don't see her mention, like, she doesn't even react to the idea that nightmares are happening. She doesn't, her narrative, her internal monologue, none of that even acknowledges the fact that she's having nightmares, or what those nightmares are, or what they look like, or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's remarkable. Yeah, I didn't even notice that. That's just kind of a textual absence. That's fascinating. Yeah. So yeah, like you said, Ashley barges into her room and demands that she hand over the black towels now that Damsel is gone, because obviously Ashley should have the black towels. And then Victoria shortly afterward takes a shower, uses Ashley's charcoal shampoo in the shower, and then she dresses in dark blue jeans, black boots, and a gray sweater, which basically is a very dark ensemble. And I'm pointing out this like several instances of her making choices with black in them or darkness in them, not just because Wildbow is being like literary, but because this is Victoria, and we know like she thinks in terms of fashion. She thinks in the language of fashion, of appearances, of clothing, and of style choices. And so it actually means something when you have a character who you know thinks in terms of clothes, choosing clothes that communicate a certain feeling. Basically, Victoria is communicating something with this outfit, even if she's communicating it unconsciously. Basically, the black, dark, almost monochrome outfit, and various other kind of choices she's making, like choosing the black towel. You could even say are choices that kind of reflect her mood. I think her current feelings.
I think you're absolutely correct on that. When you have a character who talks like lovingly about the message that fashion can send, she is aware that she's sending a message with her fashion. You have to say that. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right. I agree 100% on her outfit. I agree on the selection of the black towels. And I think this is interesting, right? Because like if choosing the black towel is Victoria subconsciously indicating, her mental state through this selection, then we have to focus on Ashley's decision to barge in and say, no, those are mine. You get the white ones. That's how this works. It makes sense to do it that way. And I'm kind of curious what your interpretation of that decision is, because my initial one, my gut reaction the first time I read this chapter was, oh, look at this. This is a symbol that damsel, or that Swansong is going to regress into damsel-like tendencies. She's taken on the white. The white has become important and identifiable to Swansong, and now damsel's gone, and she's regressing back into that black. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I've been really pessimistic about Ashley lately. Like every one of my bits of analysis was like, I don't know, this is not looking good. So I'm going to choose here to be more optimistic. And once I looked at it at this angle, I keyed in on something that I don't know if is intentional or not, but that I really like here, is that this is less Ashley abandoning the symbolic white of her new persona and returning to that black of her former self, and more, in my opinion, about Ashley perhaps seeing struggle in Victoria and injecting herself to kind of right her on the correct path. And this might not even be like Ashley is consciously doing this, but just like the symbols around the towel choices could be representative of this is what Ashley feels like her role is now. She's seeing this struggle in Victoria, and she's going to be the one to come in and push her back on her right path, push her back onto that white towel path.
Yeah, what's interesting is I don't think I would have agreed with this until you pointed out some other things that Ashley's doing in this chapter, which I think we're going to get to in just a minute. But basically, Ashley does seem to be paying a lot more attention to Victoria than maybe Victoria realizes. Yeah, I guess my first thought was just like, Ashley's not going to allow Victoria to be the dark brooding one in their pair. She's like, no. Obviously, you're the white hat. I'm the black hat.
Right.
But yeah, I think there might be more to it. I feel like all the color choices are meaningful here. Like there's
sure.
The arc is titled Black. There's several instances of black and darkness immediately being mentioned, and they're things Victoria is choosing. So
yeah, and I mean it is very Ashley to kind of be observant enough to know when someone needs looking out for, right? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what she does with Kenzie. And at the end of the last arc, we had this conversation between Ashley and Victoria where Victoria was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Like everyone seems to be bad. I don't know where to go. And they were kind of going down the breakthrough list. And she got to Sveta, and Ashley was like, focus on that. Focus on Sveta. Make sure she's okay. And in the back of my head, I hear Ashley going, well, I'm going to be focusing on you.
Yeah. And I like the subtext of that is that they don't even bring up Ashley because she's just like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, right.
So at breakfast, having defeated the very concept of eggs, Victoria is now able to enjoy feasting on the symbolic body of her former foe.
I love that the book is allowing you to continue to make these ridiculous egg joke interpretations.
I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, Ashley made breakfast for Victoria. So
Right.
yeah, it's once again, you mentioned this earlier. Basically, Ashley's taking care of Victoria in these very subtle ways that are meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've seen her do with Kenzie over and over again is this idea that don't get distracted. You have to remember to eat your food. And we see it in this chapter, right?
Yeah.
She's saying Kenzie's getting like wound up in all her stuff while they're having this FaceTime conversation.
Right.
And Ashley's like, no, eat. Remember to eat. And that's kind of what she's doing with Victoria here by making her breakfast and saying, look, here, food, eat. She's taking care of her.
Right. And again, we have to remember that it's been 3 weeks. Like, for all we know, Victoria, like, she's just noticed Victoria not eating, like, and it has just made like almost made a habit of cooking breakfast for them or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, they're talking to Kenzie at their breakfast, and we learned that Kenzie did start a new kind of team with the Junior Heartbroken and Chicken Little. So I guess yay / oh no.
Right. And I like that the book is being fairly ambiguous as to whether this is a good thing or not, right?
Yes.
Kenzie certainly seems to be happy with it, but of course we know looks can be deceiving in that department, and what it makes Kenzie happy might not always necessarily be the best thing for her in the long term. And breakthrough through the eyes of Victoria seem okay with it, right? But okay with it in a very interesting way, because like I feel like in Victoria's head, she still kind of sees Kenzie as just part of the team, because we get the specific mention here that Kenzie's saying, oh, remember, you're going to have to pay me for showing up here, and you're going to have to pay me for this work I did on this mask for you. And she's like, yeah, okay. And then she says in her narrative that the amount we're going to be paying her was equal to the stipend we give to members of our team anyway. So it's like, it feels like the reason for that statement here is like, look, I know she's on this other team. She's doing this thing with these kids now, but in Victoria's head, she really still, for all like logistical purposes, is still on the team.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. Victoria basically still sees her that way.
Yeah.
So Ashley then complains that her prosthetic feels numb, and she spontaneously pulls off her arm, showing a black and red stump. So again, black, and then red is another color we're going to see highlighted a bunch of times coming up.
Yeah, and I love that, like, with this and with Victoria's mask, like, these are 2 chapters of costume changes, tech checkups. Like, we're taking stock in everything. We're taking stock in our physical health. We're taking stock in our equipment. Our protagonist should be taking stock in her mental health, but she is definitely not doing that yet.
Yeah, right. And so, wait, I guess we'll get to the Jessica Yamada stuff, but like, that's been looming over her all this time too. So she does have Darnall, but I don't know. We'll get to that.
She doesn't. I mean, she certainly doesn't. I think it's implied at the end of the second chapter that she maybe has seen Darnall, because she talks to Darnall about Yamada, right?
Yeah.
But we don't see that interaction. We don't know how often she's met with him, if she's even met with him, just talked with him. We don't know.
Yeah. So Ashley and Victoria then head to their grim business, Ashley leaving carrying a black messenger bag.
So this is a good time, I think, to talk about that arc title. We've been talking about black things a lot, but what does black represent, right? Because black, as we know, is the absence or complete absorption of light. There is no light in black, none, by definition. And throughout this entire story, our arc titles have been playing off light. Light in different ways, and it's both like the positive and negatives, right? Like, light can be a beacon, it can also be gleaming, but it can be blinding as well. Things can cut into light, shadows, shade, and eclipse, right?
Yeah.
And now, like, there's just black.
Yeah.
The absence of light.
I mean,
no light at all.
It is interesting because Pitch is maybe the closest prior arc title,
right?
And Pitch is black, but black is like almost a more essential way of saying it. Like, you know, Pitch can still, like, you can still see shadows when you look at Pitch. Black is just black. Like, it has no features. And it doesn't have the connotations of like Pitch can be sticky and so forth. Black is just like the purest form of, like you said, either the absence of light or, interestingly, the saturation of every color of light, which is we're not nearly far enough into the chapter to talk about what these connotations could actually mean yet, but there's definitely something there, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the first couple chapters are definitely seeming to me setting up the negative connotations of it, right?
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting that the way the story has been playing with imagery and kind of reversing imagery, right? Like light can be light can be illuminating. It can bring forth truth. It can bring forth hope, but the text isn't afraid to show the negative side of that too. And I'm interested if we're going to show, the positive and negative sides of the absence of that light, if we're going to try to explore that.
Yeah, I bet we do. We usually cover the duality of a lot of these things that we're.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So yeah, cool. So Victoria and Ashley are joined. They join Natalie, Kinsey, Aaron, and Rain at the new Warden's HQ as they observe from a distance Moonsong dumping Byron. Yeah, and I like. So there's this popped out way more on a second reading, but basically it says, I passed Natalie, murmuring my hello, and I approached Rain and Aaron. So basically she just completely blows off Natalie, and then she proceeds to spend like 8 sentences describing Aaron's outfit in detail.
Yeah, you're right. And if you look through the scene, she literally describes what every single person standing around is wearing, except for Natalie. The first time I read the section, I was like, oh, wow, she doesn't drag Natalie's fashion choices. Good for her. Maybe she just didn't have anything nice to say, so she just didn't mentally say anything at all. But I don't think Victoria could resist if she had something to say, at least in her head.
Yeah, we could consider this like a step up, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I definitely, like, she's definitely warmed to Natalie over time, but this is still just, I mean, I just thought it was kind of funny that the fact that, like, I almost read it as like, I don't know, this is maybe not super generous to Victoria as a human being, but like she is sort of the kind of person who gravitates toward the dazzle of capes and beautiful people and judges people based on their appearance. So like, of course she's going to walk by the normie Natalie to go talk to Rain and the hottie Aaron. Like that's just, that is kind of how she thinks. Like it's, I think it's accurate. Like, I don't think I'm being unfair here. I think she does do this a lot.
I think it's more than that, though.
Yeah.
And I think it's the murmuring of that hello, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's clearly uncomfortable around her, in my opinion. That this kind of like quick murmured hello as she walks by.
Oh, yeah.
Who is one of Natalie's favorite people? Matt?
The person that Victoria splattered recently.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Carol?
Could be related.
Yeah, I mean, Victoria is not really dealing with how she's feeling about that right now. She's kind of put it off. She's pushed it out of her mind. She's not thinking about it. We know it's in there. We get hints about nightmares. We kind of see through her physical therapy, her pessimistic outlook on everything right now. We see she's not doing well, but she's not dealing with it. And then here's Natalie, kind of this living reminder of her mother, because she knows about that relationship and she's, I don't want to deal with it. And so I just kind of walk by, say hello and walk by. It seems like that's very true to how Victoria would deal with this thing she doesn't want to think about right now.
I mean, because there's even a risk that Natalie could literally just be like, I heard some news about your mom, or do you know anything about how your mom's doing? And then Victoria would just have to be like, implode. Yeah, I think that's probably has a lot to do with it.
And the other interpretation is Natalie is a representative of the legal system, and she's going to walk into a building right now and do something extrajudiciously with the rest of the capes that she's not feeling too comfortable about. So Natalie's presence here in as she's wrestling with this grim business, she called it, kind of makes her uncomfortable, and she doesn't want to deal with that until she has to.
Yeah. Interesting how much we have basically 3 different interpretations on I murmured my hello and walked by.
Isn't it close reads? Aren't they great?
It's good. Yeah, we're going to have plenty to say about these chapters.
Uh-huh.
So regarding Byron, as she's watching him, He probably had one or two stores he liked and picked a suitable muted color. Victoria couldn't find much fault in it kind of wardrobe from the selection there. It's just so good.
Yeah. It's not great, Byron, but it ain't bad.
It's all right.
It's good work.
Yeah. I was imagining Tristan and Byron like in the store swapping out repeatedly and Tristan like trying to urge him to be more daring and then just being like, all right, fine. If you're not going to get the red bandana, then at least get something like that matches, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about this whole thing is that one of Byron's very early claims to Tristan during their strangle fight was that Byron was actually more stylish than everyone gave him credit for. And it's just like Tristan like took the stuff and just like made it seem like it was his idea. Right.
Yeah. Stole the spotlight in like every possible way. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think this kind of fits in that Byron is not style ignorant, right? He knows what he's doing, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of just like the whole everything that's going on here, I just love how this is all done because it's a bit bittersweet and it's also quite darkly comic in my opinion. As the team, like for example, like here, the team is just kind of shamelessly gossiping and like talking about what is happening between Byron and Moonsong, and then also moving on to just like school Rain on the finer points of what dumping looks like. And I thought it was both like I like felt bad for Byron, and I also thought it was hilarious. I don't know if that was intended, but I sure did.
I think it was. I really like the scene too. I like that Victoria and Aaron are just like so incredibly in tune with what's going on here, right? They're like finishing each other's sentences. And then Rain is so hilariously ignorant about it. It's like Beauty and the Beast, Matt, when like the Lumiere and Cogsworth and Mrs. Potts are like noticing that the Beast and Belle have a connection, and Rain's poor Chip, the teacup, who's like, "What's going on, Mama?" Yeah,
that's seeing Rain.
It's my random reference of the day.
Seeing Rain as Chip is really a positive thing for my life.
There you go. I'm wondering though. I'm wondering if this says something about Victoria specifically, right? Like, because perhaps a small hint at the complications that were the Dean relationship before he passed away. Because like we do get this one line here where she says, at least this way they get some closure. Not getting closure sucks. And to me, that's definitely a Dean reference, right? Like she never got to say goodbye. She never got closure with this man she loved. But I wonder if we're getting hints at some complicated stuff going on in this relationship. We've kind of talked about how this is maybe possible because like we've talked over and over again about the pedestal and the little bit of hints and reveals in her narrative that maybe things weren't as perfect as she made them seem. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think that all makes sense to me. So Aaron then leaves to do a thing with Lachlan, and Victoria says something that I thought was really interesting. So yeah, basically first Aaron says something about this idea that like once something is done to your head, who knows if it can ever be fixed. And Victoria kind of blows it off and is like, don't feel too bad, and says reality is we thought there was no way around what was done to my head and my feelings, and we thought I'd be like that for the rest of my life. But things did get patched up in the end. I'm a little worse for wear, but I'm me again. And I mean, this is cool, I think, because like for all that we've been kind of focusing on Victoria being a little bit down, like subtextually, what she says out loud here is actually pretty positive. I could dwell on some of her word choices, like the implication of patched up, for example, is that you didn't really fix it. You patched it. The problem's still there. I'm a little worse for wear, but I'm me again. I think the I'm me again is the thing that I wanted to maybe focus on as being like the most positive statement, because it's pretty unequivocally just like, yeah, I'm me again. Like I'm a little worse for wear, but I'm me again. I don't know. That to me strikes me as a more positive spin than she would usually put on the whole ordeal that she's been traumatized by this whole story.
I think you're right. Is this the first this isn't the first like for real confirmation that we've got that the mind messing that Amy did is fixed, right? I don't think so. I think we've known that before.
Yeah, I think it was more or less, if not explicitly stated, then very strongly implied when she described what was actually done, when Amy fixed her.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so because I know I've been seeing people in various, I think even in some of our discussion questions, people mention like, well, how's she going to ever have like a normal relationship if she still has this mess up stuff that Amy did? But it doesn't seem like that's not been done, right?
No, I my impression is that Amy fixed the specific thing that she had done, but Victoria is still basically reeling from having had that running through her mind for 2 years.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And like this, the consequence of like feeling out of control and feeling like being pushed around by a compulsion that wasn't actually hers and all that stuff.
Yeah. I thought this was known, and some conversation that I saw last week seemed to indicate that it wasn't. So, that's good. Cool. But yeah, no, I like your focusing on the positive there, because I think Victoria is a pragmatic person, and while she can get down in the dumps and negative and pessimistic about her stuff, she is a person that is able to give herself credit for some of the things that she's accomplished. And yeah, I'm me again. She is saying that. And I think it is very fitting for Victoria that this happens, that this looking at herself in a positive light comes from her attempting to make someone else feel better, right? Like that's a very Victoria thing that like, if maybe she was just thinking to herself about this, she wouldn't have phrased it that way. But because she's trying to encourage someone else and give someone else hope, she's much more positive about herself than she normally would be, because that's her kind of giving, like, I need to help all these people around me nature makes that true, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the pop culture of Earthbet another wonderful comedic moment, by the way, where Rain is completely guilelessly like, oh yeah, Aaron's just been catching me up on all the old classics that I've missed. 16 Candles, Oil and Vinegar, Not So Sweet 17, The Love Cats, Metropolitan Girl, Ring Finger, the live action Peanuts with the actress from 16 Candles as the red-haired girl.
Yeah.
So like, even though I didn't get hardly any of these references, I was immediately like, oh, this is hilarious. She's just making him watch all these movies that she wants to watch that, like, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are 16 Candles is a John Hughes movie. So this is another weirdness of alternate Earth pop culture, right? Because Oil and Vinegar is a John Hughes movie that did not get made. I think the live action Peanuts with Molly Ringwald is also a movie that did not get made, but they apparently did in this world. So here we are. Yeah, I mean, these are kind of like, I think the other ones are just made up. I think like I have no idea what The Love Cats is or Metropolitan Girl or Ring Finger or any of those. But these are very like, if they follow in line with what these other movies are, these are like teen, like kind of romance love story films.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, they're definitely like we're in this middle of this conversation where like Victoria's trying to give Rain credit. And it's like, no, this movie thing's probably more for me than they are for her. And then she lists all these movies that she clearly loves. They're clearly like almost targeted at a young teenage girl type of film.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's it's doing two things. It's doing fun with alternate Earth pop culture, but also, yeah, I mean, it's like she loves John Hughes movies and she wants to watch John Hughes movies, and so she's going to do that, and it's great. It's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, and a little joke at Rain's expense for not realizing that this is not a thorough cross section of popular culture.
Right, and this is kind of a lot of this chapter is doing that, right? Like he doesn't understand relationships, he doesn't understand pop culture. Like these are all things we're gonna go into next chapter about his style and his understanding of design.
Yeah, there's a lot of focus on Rain. Yeah, that's a good point. We'll keep an eye on that. Mm-hmm. So as they're walking, as Byron and Moonsong are walking back to the group, Byron swaps out with Tristan, utilizing one of the lesser-known powers of Capricorn, which is hiding your pitiful, sobbing face in the shard dimension.
The first and only time I've been jealous of their switching ability.
Yeah.
I need like a good pocket dimension cry every so often, right?
Yeah, right. Tristan, can you be the face man for a while? Yeah.
Poor. So, I mean... That's interesting though, right? Like I think our relationship and the book's relationship with Moonsong is a pretty complicated one, right?
Yeah.
She hasn't been a great person. Like being a bigot is not great, but I think it's maybe less like enjoying Moonsong and more just feeling bad for Byron here, because we did see Moonsong as someone who stuck up for her, who's the reason why Tristan's lie was discovered. So we have complicated feelings towards this character, and so it's still kind of sad to see Byron lose someone they cared about.
Yeah, definitely a three-dimensional character. But I mean, ultimately, I think Byron probably knew that this is kind of where, like we knew that Byron hadn't like gone out of his way to make contact with Moonsong or anything like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it was more like he probably is sad about it, but I doubt he's surprised. So
yeah,
anyway.
well, and I love it as this like they weren't really dating. It was basically over, but both of them were walking around as if maybe one day, and it's ending that part of it. I really like that idea of just like where, yeah, like you think it's gonna be fine, but things like this is ending the hope of something, and that even if you're not like really consciously thinking about the relationship, the idea that thing is taken away forever is rough.
That's true. So next thing that happens, Sveta apparently has been here this whole time. She's been in the building, and now she steps outside, and we realize that she's covering her body with a coat and using two rain-built hands. So basically, yay, on the one hand, she's relatively confident that she won't accidentally kill anybody. She's sort of just out of any kind of protection. But also, it sucks. She doesn't have her body anymore.
Yeah.
She's obviously not like thrilled about this situation, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, right? It's great.
Yay.
I guess. Like, yeah, it's weird because everyone kind of collectively agreed last week that out of this team, the one that's probably doing the worst and is going to continue to be doing the worst into the future is Sveta. But she's doing okay. And maybe that's the threat of it, is that everyone's kind of like we have a Vista a little bit later said, like, I'm really shocked at how well Sveta's doing. Maybe that's the danger, right? Everyone thinks, oh, she's doing great. And actually, underneath it all, she's not. And then you add that Weld ticking time bomb to that, and it's going to be bad. But yeah, I mean, obviously she's not great. We learned that in a conversation a little bit, but she has hands. She doesn't have her body, but she has hands, and she's comfortable enough being around other people without lashing out and killing them. So, baby steps.
Yeah, right.
Baby tentacle steps.
I'm having a pretty hard time being positive about this. I mean, and I'm trying not to lean too much on the metatextual, like she's the only character we haven't had an interlude from, which is completely true and impossible to ignore. But like even outside of that, I have often felt in this story like she's acting more okay with certain things than she actually is.
Right. Like we talked about that at the very beginning of the story. Sveta's thing is unrelenting optimism, because it has to be better, right? Like things have to get better.
Yeah.
Was what she said at the very, very beginning of the story.
You have to be adding bricks to this tower of bricks that you're building.
Right.
And yeah. Well said. So basically Victoria talks to her for a little bit and tries to go out of her way to, so first she goes out of her way to make Rain feel good about having helped Sveta, which, and then when he kind of continues to be a downer about it, she delegates the HR violation to Tristan, tells Tristan to give him a punch.
Yeah, and I really like this a lot because like I think they've grown to respect each other a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think they like, she saw what he did in the last fight. She saw what he went through, and she has an appreciation for him that she didn't have before, because we saw in the last arc, she was really short with him. She gets really annoyed with him very quickly, and she doesn't do that here. And she sees a moment to just say, hey, look, you did that. You see those arms? You see what how she's standing right there? It's a little thing, but it's a thing that you did. And it comes off of this constant disparagement. And she doesn't, like, even when he's like, oh no, it's mostly her, she did it, I just helped out. The Tristan smack him for me is much more like like rolling your eyes than actually like upset and annoyed by his pessimism, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's more scenes in these two chapters where Victoria is actually giving a lot more attention, a lot more positive attention to Rain, and actually kind of seeming to care about him. And I think we'll get to that shortly. Yeah. So yeah, Victoria then goes and catches up with Sveta. She talks about her arms. She says, "I have arms and they feel like mine." And he's trying to figure out how to emulate the skin that Ashley has over her hands. That's amazing, isn't it? So, yeah.
So this is, I mean, this, I want to be hopeful, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I have arms and they feel like mine. They feel like mine. That's like, she doesn't have her full body back, but she has these arms and they feel like hers. And like she's writing and she's getting, her handwriting is getting better. And you're seeing those are maybe some of the bricks, right? You're just talking about the bricks. And maybe that's some of it's like, I have these arms, they feel like mine. I'm writing in this diary. I'm, putting my thoughts down, bricks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, are you really okay? Or is this you just desperately clinging on to those things out of necessity? Meanwhile, there's this turmoil underneath you. But I mean, we've been talking about Sveta and how bad we think she's doing underneath it all for arcs, right?
Yeah.
So like I don't know if eventually we just have to be like, no, maybe she's like actually just doing okay. Or maybe this is just a long, slow boil to a massively huge explosion. I don't know.
I definitely feel like it's a slow boil. Like at a certain point, I was like, yeah, okay, Byron's not actually evil. But I'm definitely not like, oh yeah, okay, Sveta's actually fine. Like I don't buy it.
Yeah. But what this does is kind of confirm exactly what Victoria said to Rain, right? Like that she's trying to build up Rain, like the importance of what he just did, the help that he just did for one of his teammates. And then her first conversation with Sveta literally confirms that these arms, this is a thing I'm holding on to right now because I have these. And it's great. I wish Rain was there to hear it. I don't think he was.
Yeah, I think you're right. So they all head inside, joining a bunch of other hero capes and 4 captured villains. And these villains are gagged and bound on their knees, surrounded by these heroes in the lobby of the Warden's building. And basically, Wildbow introduces these 4 villains as a case study on how can we play to your intuitions about criminality in different ways. So we've got one is a former hero who got hooked on smack and derailed his life and became a danger to everyone. We got one that's a plastic surgery addict who scars people for life to borrow their looks. We got another woman who acts as a gopher for a wealthy animal parts trafficker and collector who's escalated to kidnapping humans. And a guy with a pocket dimension that he, I guess, uses for torture and horrible things.
Yeah, and that's the unconscious one, right? Like they can't, if that guy's even awake, he could just send people into his pocket dimension, so they got to keep him unconscious. Yeah, I mean, we're leading up to this moment where we say we're going to disappear these 4 people, right? And we'll get to that in a second. But right now, I do think you're absolutely right that these are Wildbow using these 4 people as like, these are the examples of different examples of the type of people where it's going to become necessary to do this thing too. And they're all different kinds of criminals. They've all done different kinds of crimes. And how are you going to feel about this? Because that's what the book is going to ask us, I think, by the end of this chapter is how do you feel about this? And perhaps more importantly, what does the necessity of this, or what do our characters feel about the necessity of this, illustrate about what the book is trying to say?
Right. It's putting us in Victoria's position basically by saying like, here's a variety. You may have an instant reaction where you're like, oh yeah, obviously that guy deserves to go to a hell dimension that he's never going to escape from potentially. Maybe that one. I don't know about that one. And I think we all we kind of, at least I think probably most people kind of line up with Victoria where we're like, well, he drill bit. Like he wanted to be a hero. He was a hero. He just had kind of a bad angle on things, got addicted to drugs, and then couldn't shake the addiction. And then in the course of like the aftermath of this, and I guess the continuing process of it, he makes worse and worse decisions. But like at heart, he's a guy who wishes that he could just break the addiction. Like, and I think that the text supports that read. Like, so it's like, it's really tragic actually that this guy is going to be sent away, and Victoria can't really articulate why he shouldn't be.
Right. And I think that is, I mean, you're absolutely right this felt icky to me. And I think it feels icky to Victoria as well.
Yeah.
But she doesn't, like, she's sitting here in this moment like, this feels wrong, but I have no idea what the other options are, right? And that's, I think, that's something our characters in these stories find themselves in all the time, that, like, this doesn't feel like the right thing, but if I can't offer up an alternative, what do we do? And that's, I mean, and that's kind of exactly where I am, where I'm like, doing this to people feels wrong to me, but I have no idea what they can do.
Yeah, right.
Instead.
Well, it kind of breaks our intuitions a little bit, because it's almost like if you just waved a magic wand and like there were suddenly no more real prisons in real life. On the one hand, you may be a person who thinks that prisons are horribly inhumane and ineffective and horrible the way they actually are, which I think is true. But the point is, now what?
Yeah.
and that's like that's not a easy problem. Like no two people are going to agree on the answer to that question.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and this is beyond rehabilitation. This is beyond punishment. This is literally just, it's not safe for people to be around you anymore.
Yeah.
We have to get you to go away. We're not trying to make you better. We're not trying to punish you for the things you've done. It's just, you can't be here anymore.
Yeah. Now there is an implication that like they're gonna be away for a period of time, and then they're gonna open up a portal and find them again. Is that true?
That yes, but not until the next chapter, right? That's not a wrinkle that's introduced until they're talking to Colt in 13.2.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like that's something that's going to happen for any of these people.
And
it's not mentioned to any of them.
And even if they are planning to retrieve them later, it's like, if asterisk, if you're still alive.
Right. I mean, they say they're 10 miles apart, right?
Yeah.
That's not that far.
Yeah.
I mean, they say at least 10 miles, but like some of these people can fly.
Right.
And like, I don't know, like I feel like people are going to gather eventually, and it's going to either become like survival of the fittest, or they're going to form a community. Which one do you think the most damaged, fucked up members of society are going to do?
Yeah, right. I mean, this feels like a terrible mistake when you frame it as like, oh yeah, we're just going to send all the most dangerous parahumans to their own planet. It's going to be like the birdcage, except they're not restrained in terms of their resources. That's going to turn out fine.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But again, it feels icky.
Yeah.
What's the other option?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So we kind of just jumped all around there.
We did. Well, I have to note that Annalise is present here, presumably because he's been replaced by some kind of replicant since Operator Red was killed previously.
Yes, some sort of doppelganger cape.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. It's the only logical solution to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it must be. Vista then explains what actually happened, how she survived March's attack and being stabbed, including details on how she has another scar on her tit.
Matt, I died. I died. I'm gonna be honest here. I was never like I never loved Vista as much as other people did, right?
Yeah.
Her death bummed me out. But not as much as it did like you and a lot of other people online. But now I love her. Uh-huh. Like I love this. Like there's so much of Vista's personality coming through here. It's like, men, cover your ears, and they all just like do it.
Yeah,
they all just cover their ears and probably still hear a lot of the words, because like, come on, how effective is like covering your ears actually?
Yeah,
but and the usage of the word tit is just like this perfect little bit of personality. It's like, it's not my boob, it's not my breast, it's like my tit.
Yeah, my tit.
I got 2 scars on my tits.
She goes out of her way to talk to use coarse language, basically.
Right. Right. And it's so fitting with her character as this person who has lived this hard life since she was a kid. She's been going through all this shit, and it's made her this kind of no holds barred kind of person now. Like around certain individuals, she just can she just wants to be honest with people. And she says as much right here. I earned my war wound. I get to bitch about it. I survived this long. I earned my right to swear and talk about tits and dicks and how I just want to get my hands beneath one cute, unattainable guy's heavy armor before I lose it. It's just like she's gotten to the point in her life where she knows who she is. She knows what she wants to be, and she's not afraid about it. I've earned this, and I'm going to talk about it. And I love it. I love it.
Yeah, me too. Isn't Golem just like responding to things they're saying, even though he has his hands over his ears?
I think the only thing he actually responds to is something after he's been waved to move his hands down. But I just feel like they heard that whole thing. And they're just like, it's great.
Yeah, I thought so. Vista also expresses interest in basically whichever Capricorn brother, I guess.
Which is really funny, right?
Yeah.
Because this isn't the first time she's mentioned Capricorn, and it was Tristan in the driver's seat at the time. Right. And Victoria was like, no, trust me, you don't want to do that. Yeah. It seems to be like, okay, well, there's the other one, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure makes Byron feel great.
Right.
It's like, can't have the gay one. I guess I'll take the leftover one.
Right. It's going to be a good relationship. Also, the fact that like they can't really date, and Victoria neglected to mention this. So anyway. So they finally reveal the plan to the prisoners, which is to send these 4 to their prison world. Like you said, 10 miles away from the nearest person, which again, like you said, doesn't sound like that much space.
Nope.
And Terry's can't articulate her reservations. And as she's thinking it over, I think this is actually, kind of cool that like as she's thinking it over, Lookout gives her new mask, which is black with like very faint, almost invisible gold tracery.
Yeah. It's great. It's wonderful. She's wrestling with this image, Matt, that she, or this decision that she's not sure. It doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel right to her, but she doesn't know how to articulate it. And she's basically making the decision here to because she can't articulate another option, because she can't articulate why it feels wrong to her, she's making a choice to go through with it. And as she's doing that, she's donning this black mask. And it is like she's assuming a new identity. She's assuming the identity of this new person as she puts on this new mask. I am becoming the person who says yes to disappearing criminals in this matter. I am becoming the person who says do this even though it feels wrong to me to do it.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that way of phrasing it. Like it's a token of a transformation, of crossing a line, maybe you could even say.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can't think of, or Victoria, even though she has reservations about Drillbit, she can't really think of any real solid objections. So they send all 4 criminals to the 4 different locations on Earth. I love the description of how they all react to this fact. Some of them fight. Some of the Drillbit just kind of goes almost as if he's happy with it, because then at least he can get off drugs. Like I kind of thought that was
kind of breaks your heart.
Yeah,
because it's like maybe that's the person who's like, okay, I deserve this, maybe is the person who deserves not to have it happen to them.
Yeah.
Like he's like, when he gets the kit, he's like, don't put any really strong medicine in there. Like this is my only chance to kick the habit. And it's like, man, like that sucks. Like it sucks.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. It's only just occurred to me, but I'm kind of like thinking like, what if he comes back in this story? Like that would be kind of neat, but I don't know. I feel like not though.
One of the really nice touches I like here, Matt, is as they're putting these criminals in these 4 different spots, they're labeling them. Like this is spot H, spot I, J, and K, which of course imply that there were spots A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And I think the text might say this explicitly in the next chapter, but the implication here is that these are not the first people they've done this to. That if we're following the alphabet, that there's 11 criminals that they've disappeared this way now, with the idea that there's going to be more coming. So this is not just a one-time thing that these guys just were elevated to a certain level. This is part of their continuing operation. We know that Victoria used this idea as one of their leveraging things to recruit other people to their organization or their community of organizations. And we've seen this stood up now. This is happening regularly.
Yeah. I wonder if this is the same dimension that like Monokuros is on, or if this is just like an entirely fresh dimension.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really find out, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as they leave, Natalie admits that her presence at the event wasn't about legal oversight, but merely she was serving as a representative of basically just being a witness. She was an uninvolved witness. The connotation, I suppose, being adjacent to a witness to an execution.
Yeah, I don't think I had connected that in my head until you read it, but like being witness to an execution is great. And I think that's one thing we have to do with these people is we don't learn until the next chapter. And I think it is really interesting how Wildbow holds that information, right? That we've gone through this whole thing with these four people before we learn about the fact that, oh, they're actually going to be tracking these people in this world. They might have people that go there for just a limited amount of time and that are called back afterwards. That's all information we learn later. Right now, we know these four people have just been thrown onto this world and presumably are going to die there.
Yep.
And the icky feeling that our main character has about this makes you feel that way too. But so I mean, in your opinion, like what is this saying about the themes of the story, right? Because we have this, we're talking about, second chances, new opportunities, recovery, improvement, getting better. These people in the minds of our characters are people that have proven that they are not capable of that and therefore must be removed from the equation.
Yeah.
And what could the text be saying about that?
Right. I mean, I think that's why there's so much foreboding here is you're taking this character for whom second chances are important and really forcing her to face the fact that some people are going to get their second chance. They're going to waste their second chance and their third and their fourth and their fifth chances, as Annalise says. And now you being Victoria have to decide what the just punishment is here. And this is exactly the kind of thing that she's sort of been struggling with all along, because she almost didn't think Amy, like she wanted Amy to get a second chance, like on principle, but also kind of a different part of her wanted Amy to be buried in a hole somewhere.
Yeah.
And definitely like giving her this power is a little bit dangerous. I think just the idea, like before, I think it was a comfort to her that she could shrug off the ultimate responsibility onto the law. Mm-hmm. And now that is gone. She hasn't used that particular coping mechanism in quite a long time. And now it is all on her shoulders, the responsibility of basically deciding right and wrong, for lack of a better word. Like before, she didn't really have to, like it wasn't like she was evaluating moral questions. She was evaluating procedural questions in context of what external code do I use as my touchstone? The law. That's great. That's easy. I can just stick with the law. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, oh shit, I have to like morally reason through like how I personally as a human being feel about this and what I feel is the right thing to do.
Yeah. I love that line of thinking, because then Natalie's presence here and her saying that I am not here on any kind of legal oversight anymore. You have moved beyond that is a perfect representative of that they've moved beyond what the law can and can't do here. Mm-hmm. And she has to deal with that, and she doesn't like it. And like, it's interesting because like when we talked about this idea, the things jumped in my head as, well, how is it going to be administered? Who gets to decide who's worthy of disappearing and who doesn't? And it seems like they've set up just about the best possible system of control around this, right? Like you need 100% agreement. If one person says no, then they don't do it, which is pretty good. Like I think it being unanimous is probably a good decision. But then we see that the only person who seems to be concerned about this at all in any kind of way is Victoria. So then it is literally all on her. Yeah.
It's also interesting that the people present, like none of them is older than like 25. Like I would guess, they've got representatives from Breakthrough, Advanced Guard, and the Wardens, unless I'm missing someone else.
Yeah.
I guess maybe Annalise was Foresight. So anyway, they've got representatives from a few different hero organizations, but we don't learn how they come up with like, okay, who goes to these meetings?
Yeah.
And why? right? Like it's not like it's not like they fill the bench of jurors through some objective process, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Or maybe they do. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten the breakdown of the controls around it, but the only one we know for sure is it has to be unanimous decision.
Yeah,
but unanimous amongst who?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So let's just move on to 13.2. I've been saying 12 for so long, I forgot there's any other arc names. The crew heads upstairs into the warden's headquarters. Kenzie is the focus here as she joins them. She's responsible for a lot of the tech we're being exposed to here.
Yeah.
For example, the infuriating security system that they have to pass through.
Yeah, proving once again that she's one of, if not the most powerful cape in Breakthrough. For sure. Like, yeah, the disappearing portal technology, everything to do with the security system. This is all Kenzie kicking ass, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because like we had this moment in the story where all her tech was damaged and she was basically like kind of crippled for a while. And now 3 weeks have gone by and we're seeing what Kenzie can do now. And it's like, damn.
Yeah, right. She has the full resources of like the wardens paying her to make this security system. She seems to be leaning a lot more on her box specialty than her camera specialty here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting too because like this is a lighthearted start to the chapter, right? We have people like joking around about how no one can get through her password system is so complicated that people fail at it constantly. And it's funny and lighthearted, and it's Kenzie like joking around about like, oh, like lasers and all these cool things will happen to you and you'll get chopped in half and stuff like this. And it's fun. But like underneath all that is this acknowledgement that like they're starting up this like super, super powerful, super secure system. And it's almost as if to say, trouble's coming. We know trouble's coming and we want to be prepared for it.
Yeah, right. And Victoria will kind of think about that again later, lampshade the idea that their headquarters does not communicate security.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, Color Watch 2019. Kenzie's pupils are now red. And Ashley approves, says if not black, then monochrome. And if not monochrome, red works. And Tristan adds, I like red, my costume, my power. And then Vista says green here. Red is associated with too many bad memories. Green is like life here.
Yeah, I love this. It's a great way to capture the characters, right? Like it's just little like what they enjoy and what they like is really great little character moments. Also like, so Kenzie's eyes just look like cameras now. That's like terrifying.
Yeah. So the implication being she's not wearing a mask at all here. Her eyes are just red now.
Yeah.
Great.
Well,
cool.
yeah, it's a hologram, right? Or
is it her fake face? I'm not.
It's a projection. Yeah. I mean, I constantly assume she just got projections running all over her face constantly.
Yeah. I think you're right.
I love that Golem doesn't like red either. He says it's stressing him out, and some people have pointed out that that's a reference back to the whole red-blue code of Dinah when Golem was fighting Jack. That like red was forward, advance, fight, blue was retreat. And it seems like the perfect kind of like tiny reference that Wildbow would throw in, just like a fun tie back to Golem's greatest moment ever.
I agree completely. I was thinking like, oh, that's got to be a reference to something. I couldn't put my finger on it. I was thinking like, is it like the blood or something? No, it's totally the red blue thing. And red is always like aggression, danger. Yeah. On like the worst day of his life. Great. So once they're down the horrifying hallway of death, they see Kenzie's dimensional portal ripping box built from a ton of recent experience with portal stuff and using her box specialty.
This is important for me specifically because I keep forgetting that she's a dual spec tinker. Like Weld says all this from a camera tinker, and she's like, no, I'm not a camera tinker. I'm dual talent. I have cameras and boxes. And I'm like, and I read that and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Cause I think literally last week I was like, what does curing the cradle thing have to do with cameras? It's like, it doesn't, Scott. It has to do with the other thing. I keep forgetting this, and I think I like that in the world people keep forgetting this too, because the camera part of her thing seems to be like so dominant in tying into, you know, her desires, that you kind of forget about the box part of it. But
yeah, I mean, it seems like a good thing to remind the reader of anyway, just to be like, hey, like, don't be surprised when she can do stuff like this, because it's been established that she can this whole time. I think she focuses on cameras. She finds cameras easier, but she can do all kinds of stuff. So then Breakthrough discusses wanting a terrifying death maze as part of their own security system. And Ashley says that she wants a dart trap, prompting Tristan to use his power to help her sculpt the shape of the dart trap. It's going to be a dick, right?
I mean, that didn't occur to me at the time, but yes, I am now 100% convinced that it was going to be a dick, because the dart dick trap. Thanks, Matt. You've measurably improved my life with that image. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad. I feel like Vista has primed me for such thoughts with her, profanity in this chapter.
Now I'm imagining like a villain trying to break into Breakthroughs and just like, wait, what are those?
Yeah.
Are those dicks? And then they shoot darts at him. It's perfect.
I agree. I for some reason, I love this bit where Victoria is thinking like, basically wants to avoid a situation where she has conflict with Tattletale, and just wants Kinsey to be successful, doesn't want to like argue over credit, and compares it to a wedding where the parents are arguing over who paid more.
Yeah.
She thinks, just enjoy the damn wedding, or in our case, our ominous black cube that tore open holes between realities. And I was like, I just thought that was great.
It is great, and it's like she's talking to herself there, right? Like just enjoy the day. She's like, Victoria, stop being angry about Tattletale, which I think is pretty significant here. She's like, all right, I need to stop this. Like, well, and the whole line of thinking that sends her down this is like, she starts this paragraph by saying, Kenzie was holding it up as if this was her entire idea, and it wasn't really. It was Breakthrough's idea, and we supplied the money, and Tattletale supplied. And it's like, it's so weird that she's like, this. She doesn't deserve all the credit for this, and then she kind of works it back around to, wait a minute, let's just give her the credit.
Yeah, it is humorously circular. So then Rain tries out the security system, and he fails because he wrote down his password in his mask's memory, and of course Kenzie's system automatically hacked into his mask and
of course
saw this fact and failed him automatically.
Poor Rain.
Yeah.
We're going to see some more Rain bashing in the rest of this chapter, and I think this is just good setup for some mask-related Rain bashing.
I agree. So continuing the Breakthrough Costume Watch 2019, Sveta has a mask now. Color is not mentioned. Rain's mask now looks a bit different, and Tristan's armor is repaired and dyed a darker shade of red.
Yeah, which again, we're kind of going through taking stock, showing how people have improved themselves. I think Sveta's mask has tendril curled at the edges, right? It says something interesting. So tying into her tendril shape a little bit more, which is interesting, right? Because I think that's part of her that she's not entirely comfortable with, and she's made the mask out of it now. But it says Victoria helped her with the design, so I don't know. I think it's just very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I had similar thoughts. So I think so now they pass through another portal into another dimension. I guess this is like another safe dimension to get to the actual like true Warden's headquarters. So that was basically, we're being super secure here. Mm-hmm. And the Warden's headquarters is what Weld refers to as a bunker, and Victoria interprets it as a place that signals something more like caution and defensiveness than unassailability and strength.
Yeah, I really like this moment. I think it's a really great like cue into maybe how the hero organizations are doing. Like, they wanted this to be this like beacon of strength, but to her, it immediately feels like, oh, this is just, you're insecure and you're scared a little bit. And I think this almost, once again, is a hint at Victoria's mindset, right? Like, she sees this thing, this really strong defensive precautions, and the first thing she thinks is, I think it makes you look a little weaker. That it makes you look like you're scared and on the defense. And I think that's an interesting kind of window into her mindset as well.
Yeah. I don't have it in front of me, but I definitely remember the description of the first warden's headquarters that was destroyed by the portal was like, epic, and had these giant statues and had like this large, like wide open interior space, like a lot of open space and openness. And this is basically described as a bunker, and like the description is very narrow and contained and hemmed in, and it's like this turtling up sensation.
Yeah. It's they're hiding, right?
Yeah.
And we have to say that this is doing something very similar to what Cauldron did, right? They locked away their base in another dimension and controlled the only entrance into that dimension.
Yep.
And it's very similar. It's like I don't know how much we're trying to connect back to the Cauldron's modus operandi and how they operated their secret base, but it does certainly seem like they're scared. They're on the defense. They're running. And it's not a good sign for our heroes.
Yeah, right. And Cauldron's solution worked really well for them until one day it didn't anymore. So
yep.
So Victoria and Swansong take a few moments to absolutely destroy Rain's costuming choices. Basically, it's like Stripes. You can make it work for you if you really work on it, but you're not making it work. And Vista adds, basic. Vista volunteered.
I think Ashley calls it puerile.
Puerile, yeah.
It's really great, and I like. It's so Rain though. Like, I kind of feel for him, because if I was a cape, I would probably need like my own Victoria or Ashley to style my shit, because I wouldn't know what I was doing. And this fits Rain so well. Like, he's this person that lived most of his life without any real like feeling of free will. He didn't think for himself. He didn't really question or wonder about things. He doesn't know anything about relationships, because the ones that he witnessed were controlled by other people. He doesn't know anything about style, because he didn't really make those choices for himself either. So like it's this wonderfully like on brand Rain stuff for him just to have no idea, and his choice is to be a little puerile, a little childish here, because he just doesn't know any better.
Yeah, right. He thinks it's cool.
Yeah.
But once again, it warms my heart actually that Victoria is spending the time with him and seems to actually care about his look, like, and care about him as a human being. Like, the whole last arc, and maybe even the one before it, they were fighting side by side. She got frustrated with him a lot, but she saw him like basically just hold it together, do the right thing repeatedly, be strong, be brave, and he's earned her respect, even though he might not fit into the tier of like best chevalier level hero for her.
Right.
He's definitely like someone she regards as a full teammate now, whereas I think before this story, arc, not just arc, but the story movement, I think she kind of held him at arm's length. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think arm's length is the perfect way to describe their relationship up until this point.
Yeah.
And she's now taking a much more active interest in him. And there, I mean, I think Ashley effectively echoes Victoria's opinion here and hers. She says to him, "You've shown muster. The mask may be puerile, but masks can be changed. But what can't be changed is you'll always know you had something sterner inside you when it counted." And that's true, right? I mean, that is what Rain realized about himself, or rather what other people realized about Rain. I don't know if he's fully able to take this compliment yet, because that's just kind of what the type of person he is. But I mean, for Ashley to have grown to a point of respect for you, you have to have shown a certain level of badassness, right? So I think it means even more that this is coming from Ashley. It's like, for Ashley to say you've shown muster, she's not going to bullshit you, right? Like, she's going to tell you if she feels like you've earned this, then you've earned it. Uh-huh. And I do think Victoria agrees with that sentiment.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, it makes me feel happy for him, honestly, even though he's not like internalizing any of it.
Also, it's really funny when he's like frantically like making changes to the mask, like as he's walking, and like Ashley assumes the same role she had for Kenzie, which is to like direct him as he's looking down at his phone, because like he's about to go meet with Colt, and he's like, I don't want to. Everyone just told me I looked like shit for for like months. I need to fix this now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also fun to me that it's Ashley and Victoria who are with him, who are the two who would most likely be like, yeah, you really should fix it.
Yeah.
It's a priority. Yeah, so they head up into the warden's offices to the freestanding, transparent walled cells holding Lovelost and Colt, who are apparently not dead.
Yeah.
Seems like they're not depowered from context. Like, I would have assumed they were depowered, but maybe they reversed whatever Cradle did.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Lovelost is in a straitjacket, and she's got like a mask over her face that's seemingly meant to stop her scream rage power, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think they would take those kind of precautions if she was depowered. I mean, perhaps it's just like lowered power, not depowered.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It basically, I mean, I am currently assuming that they got their powers back, that they somehow reversed what Cradle did.
Yeah.
Even though we don't have evidence for that, I feel like the text would have mentioned if they were still depowered. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they're considering throwing Colt into the prison planet, and if she didn't have any powers and they were doing that, that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah. So we get an update about the mall cluster in general from Rain. So apparently they've been meeting in the dream regularly, but not communicating much. Colt kind of perpetually seems out of it, not really understanding the gravity of her situation. Lovelost maybe kind of coming around to seeing Rain as not a complete monster anymore.
Hey.
Yeah, and Cradle is just kind of disengaged constantly.
Yeah, I'm really curious where this is going to go, right? Because I think at the end of the last arc, we were like, okay, we've done it. The Cradle arc is over. But then the first 2 chapters of this new arc, we've kind of zoomed back to their cluster, and Rain dealing with this cluster and them dealing with these characters. Like, what is going to happen to them? What is the end of Lovelost's journey, right? She's this really fascinating character. I really enjoyed her interlude chapter. We saw that like she realized her error, the error of her ways, but it was maybe too late, and now she might get another chance here. And what's going to happen there?
Yeah.
But I like that. Like, I think the big question in my head leaving that arc was what's going to happen in the dream now, right? Because it's like, oh God, you've just defeated this guy. What's that going to be like? So I'm glad that this gets answered within the first 2 chapters.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like Wildbow has a list somewhere of like, what are all the things that the readers are going to be wondering about
right.
That I can address, provided it's not something that I need to keep a secret, right?
Yeah, and we are kind of subtly starting to position our whole Colt thing, where they bring up the idea that she's not acting like she understands what's going on, and that's going to have a lot of importance as we move into that Colt conversation.
Yep. So speaking of that, they visit her in her cell, and it's interesting because like Victoria never kind of thinks like the goal of this conversation was. Mm-hmm. But we pick up contextually that the goal appears to be for Rain to try to get through to her in some way, and get like maybe some credible glimmer of contrition from her, or at least like an understanding of what she was complicit in. And you get the sense that they would even accept her just like giving them some info about Nailbiter as like a token, compromise. But instead she just kind of doubles down on like a combination of seeming to not understand what's going on and then like not taking any responsibility at all.
Yeah, I think this is the key part of the chapter. So I think we got to make sure we spend a lot of time on this, because I think Colt is this really deceptively complicated case, right? And what I love about this is we had this whole chapter where we took 4 criminals and we said, okay, reader and Victoria, how do you feel about making these bad guys disappear? And we're like, well, I mean, 3 of them, sure. I don't know how I feel about this last one, but I guess. And then immediately we're like, okay, how about this 5th one now? Here's a little girl who doesn't seem to understand why she's being punished, what the bad things she did wrong were, who later is like begging for another chance, even though she clearly doesn't understand. Like, how do you feel about that one now? And I love it. We're complicating this thing.
Yeah. Especially because now there's powers interference, which is something where Victoria, as Victoria will say later, she's like, I don't even know if the authorities are equipped to tell when powers have interfered with someone's mind.
Right. Like, yeah, we acknowledge that sometimes breaker states mess with your mind and space you out to the point where your brain just doesn't work as well anymore. But we can't prove that definitively. It could be just her faking it. It could be just a misread of the situation. We don't know. So what do we do in that case? Do we assume? I mean, like we had a guy that we just sent that was suffering from addiction. He had a disease where he was suffering from this addiction and couldn't get over it, and it was causing him to behave in terrible, terrible ways. And we said, well, can't cure him of that addiction, so get him out of there. And now we have a person who might be suffering from shard shenanigans fucking with her brain. What do we do about that one?
Yeah, it doesn't help. It doesn't help that Wildbow makes her like a maximally frustrating case to deal with, because she'll say stuff like, "Oh, can you bring the psychiatrist back and I'll give them different answers this time?" It's like, okay, could you not be patently manipulative right in front of me when I'm trying to like evaluate whether you deserve mercy?
Right, and that's the thing, and that's we're going to get into why this pisses Rain off so much. But the thing is that she doesn't seem to understand. The only part of this whole thing she understands is that there is a consequence. She doesn't understand why the consequence is there. She doesn't seem to get what she's done wrong and why she's being punished for it, but she understands the punishment, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to avoid the punishment, which is not really making amends for anything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, basically, so I feel like eventually she comes around to making a good point, though, which is basically to say, like, hey, Rain, you did some bad stuff too. And it actually took you a while to feel properly bad about it and to figure out how to go about making amends for it. And by the way, Rain, it's only been 3 weeks since I was, caught. And basically, like, this isn't a moral argument. This is a, hey, Rain, you're not any better than me, really, argument.
Yeah, right.
And it's really interesting that Rain has a hard time buying this, because like a big part of his mentality and how he grapples with his wrongs is that he feels like he's trying to work against the way he was raised, and she doesn't have any such excuse, and so he has a hard time kind of extending that kind of charity to her.
Yeah. He sees himself as a person who had no choice, but the second he did have a choice, he chose to become better. Mm-hmm. Whereas he sees her as a person who always had a choice and consistently chose wrongly. And I mean, there is some truth to that, right? But how much leeway do we give people? Like, Rain was lucky enough to get a lot of leeway in this transformation process, where as he was figuring himself out, he got these opportunities, and we're kind of saying to Colt, you don't get the opportunity to work through these processes. I mean, here's the thing, like, she should not go, like, in my opinion, I'm willing to make a definitive statement here. Dropping her on this prison universe is not good. Is not what we should do here. Like, should she be in prison? Yeah. If there's a possibility of imprisonating her and giving her the opportunity to kind of work through these things in a way that Rain got the opportunity to work through these things, great. But I feel like if you just drop her on this planet, she's gonna die.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not going to get better. Like, I mean, the dropping them off on this dimension thing is like the last resort. It's like, we have decided, well, it's not even that though, because we learn later that it's like, oh, we're going to just send you there for 3.5 years. Once your sentence is over, we'll pull you back. But
yeah, right.
She's probably going to die.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bunch of crazy people with superpowers over there.
Right. I mean, it does seem a bit, when you think about it, like, yeah, in 3.5 years, we'll take you back, and I'm sure you'll be in a much better state of mind.
Right. Like, you know what helps you get over and learn a lesson from the terrible things you did? It's struggling to survive in a foreign place surrounded by bad people with superpowers.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I find that the it's just a sentence and you get to come back wrinkle of the disappearing to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, right. Almost borderline disingenuous. Like
right.
Like, we know this isn't real. We just have no other option.
Right. And it's like, oh, well, if you're like in a bad place, I'll be in the dream with you every night. And and you can tell me, and then we'll come help you. Will you though?
Yeah. Right. Unless we're busy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, they're like desperately trying to like just give us any information you have, just anything you have, any information, and she just honestly doesn't seem to have a lot. Like she can't tell them where, like, because Colt's dumb. Like that's the thing. It's like that's why you kind of feel bad for her. She's just dumb. She doesn't get it. She doesn't understand. No one really trusted her with any information. So is she going to know where Nailbiter is? Certainly not.
Yeah. Yeah. I see Colt as like instance number 10,472 of Wildbow kind of painting you into a corner with regards to your moral reasoning, or maybe like tying your moral intuitions into a knot is a better way of framing it. Because he's gotten us to this point. I think almost every reader at this point is like on Team Rain, even though they may have been really pissed off at Rain for a long time. I think even like one interesting thing about like, keeping part of the fandom throughout this story's evolution is that different people have kind of softened up on Rain at different times. Some of them were almost immediately willing to extend him the benefit of the doubt. Some of them it took much longer. It took him kind of proving himself before they were willing to kind of admit that he had turned a new leaf and was cool now. Colt is like Rain, but with no extenuating circumstances, no justifications that make it seem like, oh, well, anyone would have behaved that way in that situation. Just like kind of a unimpressive human being who got swept up into circumstances and then did nothing to get out of those circumstances.
Yeah.
And then was complicit in terrible things, and now has no contrition for having done so. And it's like, interesting.
Yeah. I love that because like I think in the grand scheme of things, Rain is an easy case, right? Like Rain stood up in front of a room of people and said, I'm guilty and I deserve whatever punishment you levy towards me.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to like a guy that does that, right? Who takes responsibility, who says, yeah, I did terrible things. I did them. I take responsibility for them. Punish me. Like, give me the consequences. I accept them. I deserve them. Give them to me. Colt is a person that can't do that, because she doesn't even seem to understand what she is guilty of. How can you take responsibility for the things you're guilty of when you don't even really understand what those are? That's a lot more complicated. And like, yes, like I don't think she should be absolved of her crimes or anything, but I do agree that this is like, okay, you thought Rain was a complicated case. Rain was actually easy. Here's this one. Right. What do you think about this?
Yeah.
Should she get the opportunity? Should she get the same opportunity that Rain got? Does the motivation to make amends matter as long as the amends are being made? Like, these are all complicated questions, and I'm really interested to see where the story is going with them, because none of our characters seem like they know what to do here.
Yeah, right. I think in a sense, this whole first two chapters is like the moral confusion chapters. Like no one has any kind of clear standing where there's no Jean-Luc Picard in this situation to be like, no, I know what the right thing to do is. Every single person here is like, oh, well, what do you think? I don't know. What are your feelings, Rain? You're close to her, I guess. And it's like, and Rain's like, why do I have to decide?
Right. And Rain is, I love that moment when like she says, I don't want to go to prison. He slams his hands down, right? Yeah. Maybe a little bit of a reciprocal red Rain we're seeing there. Mm-hmm. Because I think for him, this is kind of challenging his entire outlook, right? Like, I think on the one hand, he wants to be fair. I think what she says gets to him a little bit about like, no, you got your opportunity. Why shouldn't I? But they are different. It is a similar situation. It is not the same situation. And I think a lot of his ability to move past the horrible, horrible things he did is this basic understanding that I didn't have a choice. And I've proven that when given that choice, I'm better. But if we give these opportunities to people who had a choice and did it anyway, I think that kind of upsets his world in a way he's not comfortable with.
Yeah, I think you're right. Complicated, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So, yep, we move on, and Colt kind of gives them something
Yeah.
by basically saying, it seems like she has a lot of insight into shard stuff that they may not have. And in this sentence, in this paragraph, I assume that the they refers to the shards. That's my interpretation. She says,
Yeah.
that's because dreams are something they don't get. They don't have enough data or reference points for them. It's why when they move on, they'll want a lot of information about dreams and dreaming. It's why things slip through the cracks in dreams or get weird or are spaces where they can manipulate things more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically we're learning a little bit about shards here, that it's not just, they don't just use dreams, they actually think dreams are important and useful, and if anything, they might be something that's relatively unique about humanity.
Yeah,
kind of a cool thought.
The thing that they're most interested in, and that ties with all the dream manipulation they did to Cradle. Why it's a dream cluster. It ties into Aiden's weird dream, which they specifically mention in this chapter.
Yeah, right. So they leave off with Colt not really having come to any conclusions about her. Yet again, Victoria has reservations about condemning someone, but can't sufficiently articulate or support those reservations. So in this case, it gets left in limbo. They don't really know what they're going to do with her.
Yeah. And I love the open questions here. Like, what do we do? Is this fair? Should she be dropped into prison world for 3.5 years? If not, why not? And how are we making the distinction? And where do we make the distinction with some people and not with other people? And who's in charge of, like, it's a complicated mess. And you just feel like this is just spinning up. Like, I feel like we're just going to be having more and more villains. I got the feeling that, like, Cradle had already been disappeared.
I'm not sure if they disappeared her or if they were using him for something else. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Because, like, they mention here that Cradle's trial went through much faster than Colt's.
Yeah.
And they did all thing and they processed him, and he's not there anymore, there being the headquarters. So they've moved him somewhere. We don't know where.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I assumed that he wasn't disappeared yet. That was my assumption.
Yeah.
So now the team goes to join Jessica Yamada, their therapist, not our therapist, not my therapist, not my former therapist, their therapist, who has sent emails to everyone except Victoria. Feeling hurt and confused, Victoria gravitates to the comfort food of the fashion and concept art corner and tries on a heavy reinforced shawl cape thing. Even as she does this, she wonders, did I want it for what it gave me or for what it kept away?
Which I think is a perfect tie back to the description of the warden's headquarters at the beginning of the chapter, right? You've got this thing. Do I want to project strength or power, or will my attempts to do that only reveal my fear and defensiveness? I think it's a really fun imagery tie back to how she describes the bunker. Because it's this thing that she's seemingly going to wrap around herself, that she's using to project some image of herself. Yeah,
that's great. I don't know if I even saw that parallelism, but yeah, the heavily reinforced concealing cape thing is definitely very similar to the bunker. That's fantastic. I love that.
And she seems aware of the fact that bunker is sending a different message than the ones that the wardens want it to. Do I want to do that same thing?
Yeah. So then chapter ends with Jessica hesitantly agreeing to talk to Victoria after she talks to Breakthrough.
And this is like one of the... I had such a hard time not reading today's chapter, Matt, and I'm sure you did. But I love what Wildbow's doing with Jessica here, and I'm really interested to see where this goes, because, like, she's this character, like, it's this perfect way of I think what long form storytelling can accomplish, because we have this character that is loved by the fan community, and the writing is able to play off of that a little bit here, where we, like, throughout this whole story, we've complicated Yamada in interesting ways. The first real moment is, I've made a mistake. Come fix my mistake, Victoria. And now there's certainly a reason for why she's doing this, but it seems on the surface so hurtful and cold, and I love it.
Yeah.
But I'm just so fascinated to see where it's going.
Yeah, I know. It's a very surprising and interesting wrinkle to be introducing in the story at this point, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's way more complicated than just Jessica feels guilty and feels guilty about Victoria. So I think it's something much, much more than that. And maybe we'll be like, it seems like we're building this up to be maybe the central plot line of this arc.
No comment.
Okay.
All right, let's move on into the community spotlight where we read what people said last week. So last week it was a mini mailbag. We didn't have a formal discussion question. We thought it kind of felt like a good break point in the story. So we made it a question bag. So first from Sarah Penguin. Sarah Penguin asks, as connections are important to Ward and Ward focuses on relationships more than Worm, who do you think will have romantic relationships and will they work? Also, any shipping regardless of canon?
This is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, okay, for one thing, I feel like we're quite late in a story for any romantic relationships to like come in out of nowhere. So if there's going to be a relationship, it's going to be with someone who's already in the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like Ashley and Victoria, for sure. Yeah.
I think we've just answered this question satisfactorily.
No, but I think that's really interesting because I think Sarah Penguin is absolutely right that the focus on relationships, the focus on connections is way more important to this story than it is well, I mean, it was important to Worm, but in a very different kind of way. And you would maybe expect to see an emphasis on romantic relationships. And there has been like in the perimeter of the story. It's never been the central focus of the story. But I mean, we have Sveta's relationship with Weld. We have characters in the background. I mean, we just had a breakup, right?
Yeah.
We just had a breakup in this chapter. So I think Victoria exploring that. I think Victoria is more likely to be exploring her past relationship with Dean than it is future relationships. But I do think that they are going to be part of what is explored. I think like family is more important than romance in this story.
Yeah, and Victoria just seems light years away from being able to really be in a relationship and even reflectively will like say things like that.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine her being like having any kind of physical affection with someone in a romantic way? Like she's just not there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think about this kind of thing very often, and I don't see it taking like a really strong role. Like, I guess I can see Aaron and Rain ending up officially together, like more than just kind of their like flirty thing they're doing. Wouldn't surprise me to see that. On the other hand, it could that maybe not. So.
Gotta get some confidence, Rain.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Next one.
Next question is from Frustrated Free Buddha, who asks, is there anything you feel has been lost with your movement from 1 hour to discuss 7 chapters to 3 hours to discuss 2 chapters? Probably sounds a little ironic with the increased time to cover the depths of Wildbow's work, but is there anything you feel has been missing from We've Got Ward since We've Got Worm was covering arcs rather than chapters? I think this question was asked to us before on the last mailbag we did last year, and I think I answered yes, I think there's something lost there at the time, I think. But a year later, my answer to this is no. I really don't think anything is lost. I mean, I think there is what could possibly be lost is like one segment of overall thematic stuff. But I really think even with this deep dive, we're still talking about the large thematic movements of the stories, the large thematic movements of the arcs. I think we're still capturing that. It's just spread out amongst 7 episodes instead of in 1.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't think anything's being lost, really.
I don't think we would have spent like 10 minutes talking about one line back in We've Got Worm. Or I mean, maybe we did that very rarely. I feel like now we get to do that all the time. And that's something that we're both interested in doing. And also just like all the many ways you can look at simple things. That's something we get to spend a lot more time doing.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that I think is lost by this format is our grace period, because we're responding to something as it's being written. So we have like the chapter comes out Saturday and we record on Tuesday. So we have very little very little time in between those, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So we don't. That is the challenging part of it, and so that's why we have episode delays a lot more in this one than we do in the other one, and that's why like it's coming up on summer, and I'm going to be on vacation in summer, and we're just not going to be able to do an episode some of those weeks because what can we do? The chapters are literally have not been written yet, so we can't. Like with Worm, I went on my honeymoon and we recorded 3 episodes in 1 week. Which holy shit, Matt, how did we do that?
I remember that we woke up at like 4 a.m. or something to do one of them.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
It was insane, but we did that because we could. We can't do that here. So that I think is a big difference in the formats. But as far as what we're getting to cover, I felt that way at the beginning and I don't anymore.
Yeah. I think you're right. This says, what are some of the fire axe moments we don't get to see because you guys realize it before the show? I know a lot of times when I read chapters, I'll miss something really obvious. For example, I thought it was Cradle's mech that got crushed instead of Brandish. They say, until I check the Reddit and see what other people are saying. Has that happened to you guys a lot? I mean, for myself, I think it's hilarious when I say something stupid. Sometimes I'll be corrected on it through a back channel while we're recording, and we'll just leave it in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think we've ever cut anything out just because we were wrong about something.
No. Our editing process, and the people that listen to us record live can speak to this, but our editing process is fairly minimal. I think sometimes I cut, like if we fumbled a joke that messed up the timing, True. I'll cut the part in between that makes it land better. But any just like factual error we made or complete misread, we usually leave that stuff in. I don't want to be dishonest. If like there are times where like if I'm reading the script and I see something that Matt has written that I just think is wrong, I will like message him and say like, hey Matt, I think you said this. I think it was actually this. And he'll be like, he'll look into it and be like, oh yeah, I think you're right. And we'll make changes to the script. And then there a lot of times, like what I'll do is when I'm working through the chapter and working through my progression of the chapter, I will just like spam Matt with messages that are just like, okay, so here's what I'm thinking about this. I'm just thinking aloud. Check me to see if you think my read is like completely off here or not. And you'll do that. But no, I don't think we ever really like pull anything that just because it would be embarrassing.
No. The only time is when like we're interrupted, basically, right? Yeah. And then it's just like, well, that's just bad audio. So yeah. Okay, cool.
Farm Fresh Hornets says, now that March is dead, what other twist of fate is in store for those who lose the final round of polling? I guess you talk about March's madness here. Well, March is dead in that world, but not in this one. So they're going to die.
Yeah.
Their other question is, what is y'all's name for the Kenzie Heartbroken Aiden team name? You got anything good here, Matt?
I wish I had thought of this more. No, I don't have anything good. Right.
I really like the idea of Aiden naming the team, and so I want it to be like the Chicken Lots, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I like that. The first place my mind went was like Eagle Eye. But that doesn't have any heartbroken connotation to it. It just has a Kenzie Aiden combination.
What about like Emotional Eagle Eye?
Emotional Eagle Eye, yeah, sure.
I mean, Aiden should get to name the team, right?
I agree.
Like we're all in agreement on that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, he's the best. Okay. He's the best at naming. Rid Tom asks, you've covered a lot of Victoria's interaction to being able to kill, but relative to the group's discussion way back in Rain's interlude, how do you think the team will behave to Victoria's will to kill, and to a lesser extent her more assertive leadership? I think that everyone is kind of on the same page at this point. Like, I don't think it's going to be a huge. I mean, I think everyone understood that the fight on Earth N was a life or death struggle, basically.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that stuff, Victoria is her own worst critic. Yeah. So she's going to take it harder internally than anyone else is externally. And when I say Victoria's worst critic, I mean besides her mom, who's obviously out of the picture right now.
Yeah. Well, like no one in this chapter seemed to be like, seemed to be like reeling from that fight, acting like lines had been crossed and they were no longer comfortable with the team.
Yeah, and as far as the leadership, I think they've always liked Victoria's leadership style, so I don't see them have a problem with it. You might see her and Ashley butt heads about leadership decisions a little bit, but I don't see Tristan really butting heads with her.
Yeah,
on that.
Yeah.
All right, Not a Flippin' Robot asks, how can you guys live with the knowledge that you forgot Ward's leader and best explosion girl Hoyden a few episodes back? She went hand to hand with Scion and lived. Very few people can say that. She's awesome. So that was an inside joke with one of our longtime patrons, Prof, who loves Hoyden, who I think when they first joined the Discord, their name was Prof Hoyden. And...
we just pretend to forget who Hoyden is.
We just pretend to forget who Hoyden is because it drives Prof crazy.
Yeah, joke answer. Who are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Hoyden died too, didn't they?
I don't
think they lived.
Yeah, Prof will be happy to hear that I literally don't remember what happened to Hoyden, so sorry.
Sorry.
Question from Q2. Is that the username?
No, that's just Not a Flipping Robot.
Question
second
2
question.
from Not a Flipping Robot. I noticed during the Narwhal segment that you guys touched on the fact that Narwhal seemed out of touch with her humanity, but never mentioned the word of God, that she had her personality partially rewritten by her shard, a la bitch. Is this because you want to keep word of God separate from what's mentioned in the story, or because you guys just didn't know about it? Explains a lot of the stuff you mentioned. Consciously wanted to keep the word of God separate, frankly, from my point of view anyway. I don't even know if we talked about that, but I was aware of that, and I was just like, I feel like all the stuff Wildbow said about his characters after Worm but before Ward, I don't want to go mining that for insight. Mm-hmm. I want to focus on what the text of this story says.
My thought of this has always been, if the Word of God stuff is important enough to understanding the character, it will be put in the story in some way eventually.
Yeah.
While it's fun bonus information, I think we've made a conscious effort to not. I don't read it. Like, I didn't know that, and I don't think my enjoyment of that section was hurt because I didn't know that. It makes a lot of sense, but
I actually subtweeted it verbally by saying that doesn't make any sense. What I said was, we do know that Narwhal is a second trigger, so maybe that's the reason why she thinks differently. So I was sort of indicating my extra story knowledge from the Word of God, but I wanted to do it in a way where it was like, yeah, this is a plausible thought that you could have without having to resort to Word of God.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, some of the Word of God stuff could have changed in the intervening years.
True.
And so until it's in the story proper, I don't want to lean on it for my analysis or interpretation. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with loving the Word of God and getting into it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. You guys do you, but it's just a decision we've made not to do.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Predatorian asks, sequels, and particularly those that follow new protagonists, often have a difficult task balancing the old and new. It can be fun to bring back characters from the original work who already have a lot of character development behind them and who fans are already invested in. But leaning too heavily on characters can begin to feel overindulgent or detract from the development of new characters and plot lines. How do you think Ward has handled this challenge so far? Has the reintroduction of old fan favorites successfully struck this balance? And if so, why do you think it's been successful? So I think the smartest thing this book did is waited a very, very long time before it really started paying off on all these new character or old character introductions. If you look back at the first few arcs of the story, with the exception of, Amy and our protagonist, I guess, most of it was introducing the new characters, getting to know the new characters, getting to understand the new characters, and like that whole arc of the first two kind of arcs of the story were very much about all the new stuff. And it's only very, very recently that we've gotten into the old stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and even when we introduced old characters, it started out with characters like Jessica Yamada, Weld, Sveta, characters who were not super important in Worm. And then
we just didn't know. Yeah.
Like they were, you know, some of them got their own interludes. They were important characters, but they weren't Tattletale. They weren't, you know, even Foil, I think, had a bigger role in Worm than, you know, Weld. She was around more. She was more important to the plot.
Yeah.
And so like Wildbow almost like waited longer to introduce characters in proportion to how important of a character they were in Worm.
I agree with that.
Yeah, except for Tattletale, she came anyway. It's not a perfect pattern, but the point is.
But I mean, Tattletale, like her introduction to the story was very cursory at the beginning, right?
Yeah,
it's just like a couple interactions, and those are interactions that made a lot of sense given her relationship with our protagonist.
Yeah,
it wasn't really until very, very recently that she's started to play a fairly central role in the story going forward.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question as asked, I think the reason why it doesn't feel indulgent, the reason why it strikes this balance is that every time one of these old characters is brought in, it feels perfectly organic. It feels like that's, you know, yeah, of course, what we know that Tattletale was going to be in the position of trying to, you know, be a gang leader in Brockton Bay, in New Brockton Bay. And like, it just makes sense that she would be involved in the story here. So, yeah.
I agree.
Cool. DataSnake69 says, if you were badly injured and had to choose between being healed by Amy or Riley, which would you pick?
Amy.
Yeah, I agree. Amy's only really badly fucked up one person, and that was like extremely extenuating circumstances. So yeah that's kind of easy, actually.
Yeah. If you're making me choose, right? Like right. I probably wouldn't like roll up to Amy and be like, hey, do some stuff. But yeah, if you're making me choose, Amy, for sure.
Yeah.
A Heroic Kumquat says, I've noticed recently just how often chapters in Ward are starting in media res. Can you talk a bit about why you think in media res what you think in media res starts achieve in Ward? And in particular, do you think Wildbow might be overusing this technique a little? I mean, I think it's a very effective tool, especially in long form serialized storytelling, to get your reader invested in the chapter immediately. And I think that's why Wildbow uses it here. I wouldn't be able to answer that second question. Maybe you can, Matt, but until, cause I haven't like actually quantified like what percentage of the chapters start in media res or not. So, I know off feeling, it doesn't feel like it's being used too much, but,
and I don't even know if there's a precise enough definition of in media res, because like sometimes it's in media res where you're just like, what the fuck's going on? Like one that jumps to mind is when she's like having an aerial duel with Crystal. And you're like, oh my God, she's fighting her cousin. And then it's like, no, they're just sparring. There've been a few like that where you're like, whoa, I literally don't know what's happening. But usually it's more like we're just picking up from the last chapter, from the end of the last chapter. And I don't really think of that as being in media res. I just think of that as being like, this is a serial. We're just continuing what was happening. So
yeah, that is not in media res for sure.
Yeah. So
I think it's more the latter or the former you were talking about.
Yeah, but like true in media res, I think that gives you a kind of disorientation that can be useful. It forces you to like, it puts you in a state of confusion where you're trying to like solve a puzzle while reading, which can be fun. And I think that every time Wildbow employs it, he does it in a way that is fun. So I have no complaints.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, the only time I really didn't like it is the whole game thing in Love Lost's, like the hangout. I forget what the name of that place was. It's been so long.
Oh yeah, when they're playing the video game with the yeah.
That's the only time I didn't really like it, but I think that was not specifically because it was a media res. Like my complaint with that had nothing to do with us jumping in the middle of the action. Mm-hmm. No, I mean I agree that can get old if used constantly, but I do not feel like it is being done that way in this story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Shinichi07 says, seeing Cradle getting his shit wrecked, then Dauntless's interlude, and then finally Vista, Imp, and Foil making the end of March, literally the end of March. What would you guys say are some or just one moment in Worm and Ward where the payoff was incredible to you?
The first thing that jumped into my mind when I heard this question was Taylor's confrontation with Emma near the end of Worm. Which chapter is that? Which arc is that? I don't even remember
You
anymore.
mean
Is that
Sophia?
20? No.
Oh,
Emma.
oh yeah, in the
20.
cafeteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cafeteria. I was gonna say the cafeteria scene too, actually.
Well, I said it first.
Yeah,
So.
shit. Oh God, I have to think of something else. I don't know. I mean, Taylor gets a lot of badass moments, definitely.
Yeah. But specifically like a payoff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I was just thinking about this the other day. I don't want to just like bloviate on the air any longer, but there was some specific thing that I was actually thinking about the other day where I was like, I guess, I mean, just to reference the red and blue thing, I thought that was a fantastic, like the way the fight with Jack ended, and then that like segueing into Scion being an interdimensional alien. I thought that was the moment where I was just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
and like
the true way in which the world is going to end being revealed was a pretty great payoff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Cool.
Okay, Calinero985 asks, has the fact that you guys now personally engage with Wildbow on various social media changed the way you perceive the story? I know that you're not pulling punches in terms of your criticism, but is there anything different that comes from knowing the creator of a work semi-professionally as opposed to seeing it seemingly exist in a vacuum? Yes. I would be lying, and I think we would be lying if it didn't mean something different, right? Like, but I don't think it is as impactful as people would think it is.
Yeah, I mean, so in my brain, there's this guy who hangs out on a Discord called Wildbow, and then there's the story Ward, which is written by a different person named Wildbow. Like I know that's not true, but like as far as my brain is, like I'm being a bit humorous here, but like it's hard to wrap your head around like interacting with the creator of something that you think is this awesome. So
yeah,
it's definitely complicated. Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, it's had a positive effect on me, and it's had a positive effect on how I see the story, and it's had a positive effect on how I criticize media in general, because I know for a fact that everything I'm saying right now is being listened to by the guy who writes the story, like right this very second. And yes, that doesn't mean I'm not going to criticize things that I don't like. But it does mean I am going to speak about the work of art knowing that the creator is able to hear me. And I think it's not that changes the way you talk about it, but I think you're much more focused and targeted and like fair, charitable might be the right word, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this changes how I approach media in general, because if I'm talking about a movie I saw, I think about how I talk about Ward, and I say, talk about this movie as if the guy who made that movie is listening to you right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's better for criticism in general, because I think I don't think it causes you to pull your punches, but I do think it causes you to maybe just be a bit more careful in the words that you choose to speak about the thing.
I think it may have sort of positively kind of infected my thinking and the way I speak about other things, like kind of like you said, like when we're on the Doofcast, I'm generally less likely than I was, 2 or 3 years ago to just be like, this movie was a piece of shit. I hated it. I hate the guy who created it. Yeah. I used to say stuff like that, and part of it was because I thought it was funny. Yeah. Which I kind of still do, but like the point is, I'm much more interested in trying to figure out, like, here's one thing I did like about that movie, and here's why I think it worked, and that's just a habit I think I picked up from doing this project.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm not saying that like you should strive not to hurt the feelings of the person, right? Because sometimes you're going to say something that is the way you feel, and it is honestly the way you feel, and it might hurt someone's feelings. But I am saying that, like, if it causes you to just be a little bit more careful in how you choose your words, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Salt says, you probably won't do a full podcast on Pack, but is there any chance we'll get just one Doofcast episode when you two are done with it?
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
I think the guys at Deep Impact are doing an absolutely wonderful job. I am, of course, like 2 arcs behind them on my slow reading, but I think they're doing a great job. But stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to chat about it. So
yeah,
cool.
As for Ward questions, Salt asks, who is the most powerful member of Team Breakthrough in your opinion? Kenzie.
Yeah, I mean, Kenzie or actually Victoria potentially. It depends on what you mean by powerful. Like probably Kenzie in terms of like versatility. I mean, but like Sveta in a certain sense. Like if it's just about like, can you kill someone quickly for us? Then probably Sveta. You know.
Did you see the death hallway, Matt?
The death hallway, but I mean, that's why it's context dependent. Is like that took her time to prepare, whereas like I mean, even Capricorn can like shoot water at you and then turn the water into flying spears. So they've all got their moments.
Yeah. All right, fine. Lost Man 138 says, "What has your biggest oh no moment been in the story so far?" What about Matt? What you got?
First thing that jumps to mind is Kenzie dumping her parents' food. And saying, "Sorry, my parents are so fucking embarrassing."
Yeah.
The Weld obviously wanting to break up with Sveta was probably the biggest moment of like, no, just bury me alive so that I can just suffocate to death and not have to read this chapter.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Kenzie and what she did to her foster parents.
Yes.
That's mine for sure.
I agree.
Yeesh.
I agree with that also. Kyrgyzstan says, what expectations did you have prior to reading Ward that you've been most surprised to see subverted or to see fulfilled? Well, me walking into the story, I actually thought that a lot more time would have passed. I thought that we'd be looking at like a generation later. The world would be very different. I don't know why I thought that exactly, but I think maybe I thought that I had heard, Wildbow said something like that. I think that was complete bullshit, and I don't know why, and I believe that. But anyway, and I don't know. I haven't really had any expectations that were fulfilled, other than maybe like it's going to be a hero this time instead of a villain.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest expectation I had that was fulfilled, I think, was that I wanted this. I don't know if it's an expectation or a hope, but I wanted this protagonist to feel distinct from Taylor. And that has absolutely 100% been fulfilled. I think we focused on that so much in the first few episodes because I was like so floored with how different of a person Victoria was. And we've kind of backed off that as the story's gone on. But yeah, I mean, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that she doesn't even feel like Taylor in any way. Because, you know, I guess there's a worry that like writers write characters in certain ways. They have a certain voice, just a writerly voice. And that writerly voice comes through in the characters and it makes your point of view characters feel samey, but that was never the case here.
Yeah, and having read Twig, I wasn't worried about that, but I can see that being a concern. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah.
Beat Nemesis says, I'm not sure why, but it seems to me it's more difficult to keep track of minor characters in Ward than it was in Worm. Has this been an issue with you guys at all? No. But I mean, it's because we're like spending 3 hours on 2 chapters. I'm curious to see if the response to this question for me would be a question of, did you read Worm as it was being written, or did you read it after it was released? Because my guess would be it's because the distance between us seeing these side characters is a lot longer when you're reading it as being written.
Yeah, it's easier to keep track of who young Buck is when you read Worm in one go instead of like that was, a year ago or whatever. So
yeah.
Tattletale 89 says there's quite a bit of fandom controversy around Amy. all hail the Red Queen, and how accurate Victoria's assessment of her is. There's also some delicious irony in the way she's seen as a ticking time bomb by her sister, while her mother doesn't see her that way. Do you think an Amy or Carol interlude could either lessen the controversy or exacerbate it?
Yes.
Totally. I mean, we've already had interludes for both of them, but maybe now Amy is no longer Amy. Maybe now she's the Red Queen, so she could get an interlude. And maybe now Carol is no longer Carol.
We've had not in this story. I don't
Not
think
in this story.
I don't think the rule about no double interludes counts when it's a cross story.
I thought it did, but the implication was that if you get a second interlude, it's because you're a substantially different person now. But maybe that's not exactly accurate.
I don't know. I just always assumed we were going to get those eventually. I mean, I think the real question was, would it lessen the controversy or exacerbate it? And it was a joke when I said yes.
The answer is yes. Yes.
I mean, because the truth is, it's absolutely going to do both, depending on what you like about Amy. Like, if you are a diehard Carol is the worst person ever, an interlude that makes her seem maybe a bit more understandable is either going to cause you to say, oh, I understand her a little bit more, or to cause you to go, no, I refuse to accept it. Fuck Carol forever. So yeah, I mean, I think these are complex characters and people have complex emotions about them, and more information is just going to complicate how they see the characters one way or the other. So for a lot of people, they will have a newfound appreciation for people they didn't like. Some people might hate people more than they ever did, and some people are just going to continue to believe the way they believe no matter what.
Yeah. It's going to continue to be as it has been so far in the Parahumans world, where people react wildly differently to different characters.
It doesn't mean I am not very much looking forward to seeing inside Amy's brain.
Yeah. Me too.
All right, Sarah asks, now after the end of Arc 12 with the first appearance of Fire Axe paired with the Vista fake out, do you guys ever wonder if you or we as collective readers have too much power? We know Wildbow listens to this podcast and reads comments around the interwebs, and being able to listen to reader feedback as he writes is something special about the web serial media, but I don't know how I feel about it possibly that we could be shaping the story in such a significant way. Was the Vista's death reader kickback or just too much, or was this just a plan all along?
I think it was definitely the plan all along. The hints are all there if you go back through it. So my answer to this is I wouldn't phrase it as power. I would phrase it as it's super valuable for a writer to be able to see in real time what people are understanding out of what they're trying to do, whether what they're trying to do is hitting the mark of what they're trying to accomplish with it, and then to adjust the sails slightly to compensate if maybe they don't feel like they nailed something, or if something didn't come across the way they intended it. That's not power, because it's not like we're getting our way, right? Wildbow is reacting, but he's not reacting based on whether we complain.
Right.
He's calibrating his vision of what the story is, or I should say, I think his vision of the story is its own thing, and what he's reacting to is, am I succeeding in communicating that?
I think that is absolutely correct. That's exactly what I would have said.
Cool.
That any quote unquote power that exists is minor. This is and will always be his story, and the changes will just be exactly that. And stuff like Fire Axe, I mean, like that's always, to me, I think it's wonderful. I love it. But it's always been just like insignificant throwaway stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like anytime Wildbow has directly referenced the community in his story, it has always been in like the smallest possible way. Like usernames in Parahumans Online was a thing he did.
Yeah.
And that's stuff that's fun, but is not like controlling the flow of the story.
Yeah. Or changing decisions that he would have made. Yeah.
Yeah, so the general answer was, if you feel like you are directing the flow of the story, don't feel that way, because you're not.
I agree. Cool. King Bob 12 says, "Who is your favorite Breakthrough member, and why is it Rain?"
Well, because Rain stood up in front of a courtroom and said, "I am guilty and I deserve what happens to me."
Yeah, I definitely love Swan Song. I thought Eclipse was just amazing. They're all great. Like it's what's kind of amazing is it's like I forget how many of them there are, but all of them have been great. Like there's not like, oh yeah, and then there's the shitty one. Like there's all been fantastic characters as we've gotten to know them in turn.
Yeah.
And I just love the story.
My answer to this question literally changes chapter to chapter.
Yeah. Right. Whoever spoke most recently is my favorite character.
Right. Yeah. Recency bias. Whoever had the last line of the chapter.
Yeah.
Favorite character right there. All right. Our final question, and this is a complex one. Lucas asks, what do you do when a piece of media misrepresents something or ties into a larger negative stereotype in Ward and beyond? How can you critique or talk about this portrayal, especially if the media is well made and seems supported in the story? How can you raise these topics in a way that acknowledges the strengths of a piece while still pushing for better representation? Do you want to give context to this one, Matt?
Yes. Yeah.
Limited context.
Yeah. So this Lucas is actually... Is this the email that we received?
Yes.
Yeah. So Lucas was expressing, I suppose I could say like some concern about the portrayal of Cradle, of Ryan, as representing a specific mental illness, and basically the portrayal of Cradle as being a villainous character, reflecting poorly on people with that mental illness or that personality disorder or however you phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I thought about this for a while, and we talked about this for a while actually. And when it comes down to it, like the question is, how can you critique or talk about the portrayal? How do you react to this, basically? And how do we raise these topics? And I'm just kind of like, this isn't really something. And maybe this is a cop out. Maybe people can react to this, but like this isn't something that I think about a lot. Like the way I am approaching criticism in general as a human being who I am, having the tendencies that I have, and thinking about the things that I think about, is to think about, okay, what is the story trying to accomplish here? Is it accomplishing that? What are the techniques of literature that the writer is employing to accomplish this aim? Like my favorite thing is to just like find something that just absolutely guts me in the story and be like, how did he do that? Mm-hmm. How did he set this up? How did he execute it? Like, how does he make these characters so lovable? Really drill into the details of that. That is what I like to think about. And when it comes to like whether a portrayal is positive, and that all to me is related to like the social context, the cultural context. And like, if I had to put it, I think, you and I were talking about this earlier. Like, I think if there's a name for what you and I prefer to do, it would be like formalist criticism.
Yeah.
And to talk about portrayals and how they interact with society, that's much more similar to like a form of cultural criticism, of which there are many subtypes. And that's just not something that we've really focused on, and that's not that I'm not particularly good at thinking about stories that way. I don't think I would even have anything smart to say about it. So that would be why I don't go there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the critical theory is a complicated, varied animal, right? And everyone makes decisions about what type of critical theory they want to focus on. There are feminist critical theorists who view and analyze novels, in the vein of feminist theory. There's people that do it with Marxist theory. There's a whole bunch of them. We have, as you said, elected to do a sort of formalism. And I'm not saying any one is inherently superior to the other. That's the thing about critical theory, is it's all just different ways of looking at the same text from different angles. The reason why I have, and I probably think you have, traditionally backed away from that sort of analysis is I don't feel equipped to do it. And I don't think I would do it justice, because I'm not very knowledgeable in that regard. And it's absolutely reflective of the privilege that I have as a straight white dude in the United States of America. But to answer the question, the way you do this is you just have a conversation. You bring it up. You say, this is how I feel about this. I feel like this did this in a way that I didn't appreciate. And you have that conversation and you share your interpretation of the story and your lens on what you're seeing. And then hopefully you start a dialogue with people. And I don't think people should outright dismiss you for your opinions, but I think there's going to be some dialogue and disagreement on certain aspects of it. And that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I think the reason why we didn't necessarily jump down that is because I don't think I can really speak about, depictions of antisocial personality disorder versus realistic, like, what that actually looks like in our world. Like, I just don't have enough knowledge. I know that I feel like Cradle is a complicated, interesting character who isn't good or bad. He's just who he is. And I thought that was really effective to talk about the struggles people have with the cards that they're dealt. But yeah, I mean, I definitely see an argument for why that would upset some people. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because even as I'm thinking about it, I'm like dragging it back into a formalist framework where I'm like, like, it's really valuable to understand if 95% of people read something one way and then 5% are just absolutely hurt by it for reasons that the author, for reasons that neither the author nor the 95% would understand. Then if you're the author, you want to know that, because you don't want to write something where you're accidentally having the wrong impact, an impact other than what you're aiming at. And that's right. To me, it's a formalist question, right? I'm like, that's just how I think about things. Very utilitarian, I suppose. Not in the ethics sense, but in the can I like how do I use this sense?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about I think critical theory is that like even if you say I am a formalist, it doesn't mean that that's 100% of how you approach everything. Sure, 100% of the time, right? Yeah.
Well, we talk a lot about morality. That's not formalist. That's just like what is the story saying about morality? Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, my answer to Lucas would be, share. Like he sent us an email, and I think we adjusted how we said some words based on his email. Mm-hmm. I think one of his criticisms of me was that I used the phrase normal when discussing people without antisocial personality disorder. And I thought I had put emphasis on it to mean like it was quote unquote normal, but I didn't say the words quote unquote normal. So I see how that could be construed that way. And I think in the following episode, we tried to adjust the word usage and be more careful with the word usage we used. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's my answer. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to remember not to read out loud the quotes that we write into our scripts.
Right. Representation is important. Proper representation is important. I completely agree with that. But yeah, I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, I think that's okay. So general discussion, literal headcanon points out that Ward has a relatively consistent tri-arc structure where each major movement of the story is divided into 3 arcs. That's awesome.
I just thought this was really cool.
Yeah.
I hadn't actually ever taken the time to break it down like that, but when you break it down into the 12 arcs that we've had, it does seem like every mini story arc is falls into that. Here's arc, like almost like a 3-act structure in a film, right? Mm-hmm. Like setup, build, climax type of stuff.
Yeah, I haven't had time to go through all the arcs and fit that pattern, but that's awesome. Feels right to me.
Yeah.
Also, after our discussion at the end of last week's episode about the fact that English class is bad because you don't get to read Worm, we got an email from a literature teacher named Matt P., who spent the last year teaching Worm to a class of 90 high school students in southern China. This is totally amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and we've asked Matt to provide us with a report on how everything went, and we'll update you as soon as we have one.
Yeah, I can't wait to learn all about this.
Yeah, sounds so fun.
Yeah.
So the discussion question for this week is: discuss your favorite example of a type of non-violent tension in Wildbow stories. Maybe not the best worded question I've ever written, but the point being, it's easy to make tension where the stakes are, to life and limb.
Yeah.
harder and less obvious how to make tension where the stakes are something other than that. But there's a ton of it in all the parahuman stories and all the Wildbow stories in general. In fact, that's some of my favorite flavor of tension. So find your favorite example of non-violent tension.
Yeah, I mean, physical conflict is a lot easier to write than other kinds, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that the story doesn't just employ fisticuffs as its tension, it's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing those answers.
Cool. All right, let's get our final 4 results for the March's Madness death match, and then do our championship picks.
All right. So first up, Matt, in the first of our final 4 match, we have the girl herself, Skitter, versus a robot dragon.
And who won that heated match?
Well, unsurprisingly, Taylor took it 63% to 37%. Let's look at some of the comments. Lexicon says, once we're at this point, everyone loses. We have some people still mourning the loss of Dennis. Still.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right.
Kippos says their head hurts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm basic. I voted for Skitter, says Enamored. This is all great.
Cool.
Thunderbutter goes on to a long explanation of why Dragon is how they're similar, and it's fascinating that they ended up paired up at the end.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, go check out those comments. And then
so advancing to the championship round is Taylor
Hebert, aka Skitter, aka Weaver, aka Capri. Okay. Other matchup, Tattletale versus Imp. I mean, whoever wins, we lose.
This was a very, very close one, Matt.
Yeah, 53% to 47%. And shockingly, I don't know. I don't know. Am I surprised? I'm not even sure. Tattletale takes the victory. So the final matchup is Skitter versus Tattletale. Best friends, enabler duo, saviors of the world. You decide which one of them lives.
Okay, so we have to read some of the comments on that last match stuff. So Robert says, vote for Imp or I'll destroy you. So Robert's got a lot of people to destroy.
Okay.
Scanderson says, whoops. I don't know what that means, but they've...
Okay. Oh, I think that refers to the Imp quote from the last arc.
Oh, yes, of course. Nihilum Supernum says, I think there's a bug in the poll. There's only one option, and it's Lisa. And then Elliot says, if Imp wins, I can pretend Amy would have. So a lot of old matchups still providing some pain.
Yeah, people still bitter over their favorites losing, I guess. Understandable.
All right. So let's talk about the championship match, though. Skitter versus Tattletale. Skitter, on her path to the finals, defeated her father, Jack Slash, her therapist, her best friend Dennis, and a giant AI machine.
Uh-huh. That's...
Tattletale, on the other hand, defeated Taylor's bully, which was nice of her, Lung, Bitch, and Defiant before taking down the elusive Imp. So, Matt, who wins March's Madness?
I mean, this is impossible. This is impossible, and I resent that you made me choose.
Matt?
Uh-huh.
It's possible because you have to pick right now.
I mean, I've already clicked on Skitter because I love her. She's such a good character. She's my favorite. She's the protagonist. Tattletale's great, but Skitter is the girl who did all the cool stuff. So
the girl who lived.
Yeah, she's the girl who lived.
Maybe.
According to me. All right. I'm doing it.
Yeah, I voted for Skitter as well.
Okay.
Look, I love Lisa. I do not like Lisa as much as the community likes Lisa. And I've kind of been surprised at just how much people like Lisa. She's cool. She's not Taylor. Sorry. This was actually an easy decision for me here at the end.
I mean, yeah, I don't like her so much as I think she's an awesome character. But yeah.
Well,
I get it.
I that's kind of what I meant, though. Yeah. I mean, she is a good character. She's not Taylor Hebert.
No, she's not. So what have you done here, Scott, on this page?
I have decided to make a third place match. or should I say March has decided to make a third place match, which is weird because I'm pretty sure we said specifically that everyone that loses is now dead. So really what you're voting for here is the corpse of Imp against, I guess, just like an empty hard drive that represents Dragon.
You know, we could say that like Dragon was killed, but Dragon just like rebooted from one of her backups. And then like whoever thought they killed Imp actually just like got distracted and then was alone in the room and was like, I guess I won. So both of them actually lived, and now they have to fight again.
Well, there you go. So they escaped their destiny only to be pitted against each other.
And this time we know who won this fight because Taylor was able to stop Dragon in her tracks by just saying that Imp second triggered and might be somewhere under her feet. So just the mere threat that Imp might be present defeated Dragon.
Wow.
So therefore I vote for her.
I also vote for Imp. She should be in the championship right now, frankly. And therefore I will take out my frustration on everyone out there by giving her third place.
Sounds good.
So that's it. We will announce the winner of the tournament and the winner of the third place match this time next week. It'll be on next week's episode. You don't get it on Sunday because there's no more voting after this week. After Sunday, the voting's over. If you have not voted yet, go do it.
Yeah.
And we'll announce it on next week's show.
Sounds good. Well, that's all we got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You can reach us via email at gotwormpod@gmail.com or on Twitter at gotwormpod, which is also where you can see my live tweets for each and every chapter. I've started reliably doing them both on Sunday afternoon now, and that seems like the way it's going to be going forward. So follow it to find them there.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to the show, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find We've Got Ward on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find all the other shows we do over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can find Vow to View, Deep Impact, the Doofcast, the Book Club, all the old shows that we stopped doing, but they're still there. You can go listen to it all.
Yeah, the old ones are good too. They're just, I mean, they're still there. They're good.
Yeah,
they'll always be there.
Yeah.
And if you like any of these shows and you want to support them, please consider donating to our Patreon, patreon.com/doofmedia. You can donate $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. Supporting us on Patreon gives you tons of great bonuses like voting in our quarterly fan art and costume contests, Q&A sessions, access to live streams of our recording sessions like this very one, and our excellent Discord chat.
Yeah, and I think as soon as we're done with March's Madness, we are going to be announcing the next fan art contest. So get ready for that. Get your pens and your pencils.
And your and your tablet computers.
Your tab, yeah.
Yeah.
Just
paint.
I don't know how art works. Do that.
Yeah. Special thanks to new patrons this week at the Bidoof level, Sam at the $2 level, and Sage of Stupidity and Endless Turtle at the $1 level. We really appreciate that, all of y'all, so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, guys.
And of course, go over to Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/Wildbow, and donate to him as well, because this is his world and we're just playing in it.
And if you cannot afford to donate right now, that's absolutely okay. You can instead help us out by heading on over to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a rating and a review there. It really does help. Really, guys, thank you for continuing to do this. It really means a lot to us. This week's review comes from Oren M., all the way from Israel, who gives us 5 stars and says, highly recommend for anyone who enjoys Worm. I thought Worm was really good when I read it, but Matt and Scott showed me Worm is so much more than I ever realized. It shows that both Matt and Scott are really passionate about Worm, and at least in the podcast, they get along really well. Yeah, actually, as soon as we stop recording, Matt and I just scream at each other.
It's really bad. Yeah.
They're also very likable and open-minded, in my opinion. All of these make the experience even better. I actually cried when We've Got Worm ended, which hasn't happened to me on any other podcast, so give it a shot. Wow, we made people cry.
Wow, that's really affecting me right now.
I thought only Adventure Zone could do that.
Yeah, so that's 2 podcasts, Adventure Zone and We've Got Worm,
and
apparently.
It's 2 ever.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Oren. We really appreciate that review, and we appreciate you taking the time. And everyone else out there, thank you so much for taking the time to leave these ratings and reviews.
Yeah, so that's it for this week's show. We'll be back next week with more Black.
So would you say that we'll be back in black?
I hit the sack.
It's been too long. I'm glad to be back. I can't play the song because we'll get copyright flagged. But you guys got me.
Yeah.
It's AC/DC. See you next week.